knowledge that is being generated through white papers, blogs, which is available on social media, research papers. There's a huge amount of data that comes out there. Now, the interesting fact is that 80% of this data is invisible. I don't know whether this statistics, excites you or takes you to have a look at it. That's billions and billions and bytes of data is being generated every day. And 80% of it is invisible. What I mean by invisible is, it is unstructured data. Data that resides in your presentations, in blogs, in white papers, in research papers. None of them goes into your security systems. None of them goes into your SOC solutions. None of your SIMs can read into that intelligence to detect or prevent attacks from happening. So 80% of the data is invisible, it's in unstructured format. So what you're trying to do is, with 20% of your intelligence or the data that your security systems can read, you're trying to protect against the universe. No wonder we have so many attacks, so many breaches that go through, so many of information that is leaked, and so many compromises that happen. And that's the reason why the cost of breach is also going up. Now, before I jump into and give you a brief of how cognitive security is trying to address this particular space, I just thought to give you a historical view of how security has been evolving over the years. Broadly, 3 eras that we can classify it into. There is the pre-2005 era, which was all the perimeter concept, where we said that, it was that whole castle mindset. We have a strong fortified perimeter, and nobody should be able to breach into my organization, and I'm secure. But very soon, organizations started realizing that it was not easy to, fortify your organization in terms of not being breached. Organizations were still being compromised, data was still leaking out, and a new paradigm shift had to be looked at from a security perspective. And that's when this whole concept around security intelligence started. The era from 2005, of course, in India, it started around 2008, when we really started talking of SIM, how do we correlate events, logs, how do we look at real-time intelligence, how do we detect faster. Those kind of conversations started around the period of 2007, 2008 in India, but globally we say that 2005 onwards, people started looking at security a little differently from a perimeter perspective, because it was very easy to breach organizations. People realized that irrespective of whatever money they put in, whatever dollars they invested, they could still be breached. So this was one era. And now we still realize, after investing so much of money into building those SOC solutions, building those next generation security infrastructure, are we any much more secure? Is our security posture gone up? Any of you in the room can stand up and say that I'm much more secure than what I was 10 years ago or 5 years ago? In spite of we investing so much into security. We still get breached. Still, you keep reading in newspapers, there is information that comes out in public domain, so-and-so organization was breached, data was compromised. Recently, you read about that, Uber, which was public information. Similarly, there are many such organizations, Sonys of the world, which are public. And of course, there are many, many which don't go public. So this information, in spite of, it's not that they didn't have technologies. It's not that they didn't have the best people in their organization working for them. In spite of all that, they get breached. In spite of all that, data leaks out. So something fundamentally is not working with the way we look at security. And we believe that the next era, which this slide says has started in 2015 onwards, where you started looking at cognitive security. Now, cognitive security will add on to your security intelligence in form of getting you a human behavior pattern or how a human brain thinks. So that is what cognitive security is going to be all about. So what are we saying about cognitive security? It is about, making sense and analyzing things at a larger scale, at a much faster pace than humans can do. So it's about scale and speed. How do we do that? So basically, cognitive security does three things. It understands. So as I mentioned to you, it helps you understand the unstructured data much better. It can read up all your blogs. It can read up all the security information available on the internet or on the social media. It can read up all research papers. It's like, how many of you seen a movie called Robo, Rajnikant's movie, Chitty? You seen him, how he reads those books? And he knows everything? It's something of that kind, where you will see cognitive security reading up everything and gaining that knowledge much, much faster at a much larger scale than human beings can do. And another important thing it will do is, like a human brain, it will reason. It's not that I have all the information like an SIM has today, and then somebody needs to correlate, make sense out of it, and then say whether it was a false positive, was it an attack. So that thing is where a human brain is required. Cognitive science is trying to move to that area where it'll start reasoning as well. It will say, okay, based on this behavior, this is a malicious file, or this could potentially lead to a breach. So that reasoning is something that it will try and do. And of course, like a human brain, the more we read, the more we learn, and more better we get at it. So that's the behavior that we will see from cognitive science going forward, not just in the field of security, but a lot of other industry 4.0 automations that we're talking about. You will see a lot of it being utilized there. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, contributing to this in a big way is going to happen. How many of you in your organization believe they have good quality security resources? There is no shortage. Anybody who feels that he's got more security professionals in his organization than he requires? No one? So there's a massive dearth. I mean, I would be surprised if somebody raised their hands. So there's a massive dearth of security professionals today globally. By 2020, we're talking of 1.5 million here, but there is another report which says 2 million shortage of security professionals by 2020. So does it make the problem simpler? You have exponential growth in breaches. The underworld is much more coordinated, sophisticated. Breaches are happening. There's a lot of 80% of the intelligence is unstructured that these systems can't read. And then to compound it all, you don't have enough skilled people. So it becomes a perfect storm. Yeah? So we believe that cognitive will help you address some of this issue as well. There are a lot of mundane hygiene tasks that one can automate to free up resources. So the question that often gets asked, and I'm not sure if it's there in your mind as well, every vendor, everybody today is talking about artificial intelligence, is talking about machine learning, but what exactly it means to me, nobody has a clue. Every vendor says, "Mere product mein AI hai." But is it going to detect faster? What is it going to do to me? How does it benefit me? So one of the things that I tried doing is, can I give you a few use cases probably where you could start on your cognitive journey? So one of them is, as I mentioned to you, you could use cognitive not to do some extraordinary stuff that humans can't do today. It's about doing your basic security hygiene. You could use cognitive to do that. And you could do that at a much faster pace and also at a much larger scale. Why should an analyst sit down on a console and be trying to analyze, correlate stuff, make sense of it, rather than he should be looking at remediation and taking action? So can I look at technology or cognitive science to really take care of that part of the business? It can do the correlation part of it. It can like, for example, process billions of events a day, which a human being can't do, and throw up that learning and intelligence to you so that you can take action. Similarly, there is this global intelligence that's available across the globe, as I mentioned to you, structured, unstructured, through global threat intelligence. Can I look that up and give you an external outside-inside view? So what impact that can have on my organization? So that's something you could look at. You could also detect faster. One of the things that security throws up, and one of the biggest challenges, how do I detect and breach or an attack as it happens? Because the earlier, myth was, or earlier this thing was that we will build strong perimeters that nobody can breach us. So once we all came to an acceptance that we cannot build it, we can spend billions and billions of dollars, but we cannot have a perimeter that cannot be breached. So what is the next best thing? Okay, I'm going to be breached, but I need to know as soon as I get breached. Have you heard of this concept called golden hour in medical parlance? Anyone? So security is moving towards that. Just for the benefit, golden hour is a belief that any accident victim or a gunshot victim, his probability of survival is maximum in the first 1 hour. As time passes, it gets very difficult for him to survive. Same applies for security as well. Because I accept that I will be breached, now if I don't detect it, maybe not in the first 1 hour, but as soon as it happens, that golden hour of security. As it happens, if I don't breach it, I will not be able to limit the damage. The more time it takes me to detect, the more machine systems, resources, assets get infected. So that becomes a very, very critical piece. Similarly, as I mentioned to you, I don't know how many of you do application scanning and all that stuff for vulnerabilities and all that. When you run those vulnerability checks, it throws up hundreds and lines of code which says that, you have an issue here, you have an issue here, then manually somebody has to sit down, correct all of them, and that's a huge exercise. And I'm not very sure it really yields in the, the benefit that it was first intended for. So one of the things you could use this is to club similar kind of problems into one bucket and apply your remediation immediately to it. So a lot of work happening in this space, which is really helping. And of course, improving your overall risk posture in organization by, there's a lot of intelligence which is also unstructured within your organization as well. Not everything is in the security systems. Not everything is in the SOC or your SIM tools. There's a lot of intelligence which is there in your emails and other systems that could be proactively looked at, and you could you could take proactive actions. Early success, few examples I want to tell you probably to put things in context. Few early successes that cognitive science has brought to organizations. Few examples. One of it is security outcomes improved. There is this case where a SOC operator, an analyst, took about 60 minutes to identify that an incident is malicious. When cognitive science was used, it took 3 minutes. And it not just took 3 minutes to tell that this particular incident is malicious, but it also gave you the details about which CNC servers it was talking to, what was the intended payload, and all that stuff, additional information. Similarly, the botnet IP, there is a inside out, there's a conversation that's happening with a malicious botnet IP, and you could detect through a standard SOC operations, that about 5 such connections were made. But when you put it up through the Watson security or cognitive technology, it could throw up about 50 plus indicators of compromise. So not just speed, but also gives you scale, and it gives you a holistic analysis of the threat around those incidents. Similarly, there was another case where we were trying to, especially these are very difficult to detect. The low and slow activities, long-term, targeted attacks, very, very difficult they go under the radar. So it becomes very, very difficult for a standard analyst to really figure out, whether it's malicious, is it compromised, not compromised. So it becomes very difficult. But with Watson, what happens is that you could really detect it much faster. You could figure out all the links and make it much more faster. Similarly, there's a very interesting incident that we solved with cognitive science was this UDP denial of service. Now, what gives a kick to an analyst, especially on a SOC operations, is what he detects. See, I've detected an attack. That's the biggest, ROI for a investment that you've done. Now, a lot of these are smoke screen. So it was like a attack where it was meant to be detected, but the intended objective was something else. You were supposed to install a backdoor. So that also was detected with the help of this. I'm being indicated I'm running out of time, so I'll just move on. So similarly, there are a couple of more examples where cross-scripting attacks were detected, which were not detected by the analyst, but the technology detected 1100 plus indicators of compromise. A web server was compromised and all that stuff. So what's the future? I gave you about the era of security. What's in future? We believe this is just the beginning of cognitive science. We've started leveraging it to think like human beings, human brain, try to copy that way of thinking. But I think there's a lot of work that's going to happen going forward. And I'm super excited that you will see a lot of progress in this field, not just for security, but cognitive is going to get used in a lot of other industrial purposes and use cases. Similarly, what we expect is as cognitive science learns more and more, reads more and more, understands more and more, it'll get better at it. It'll get better at detecting. It'll get better at identifying hidden attacks. And the overall objective is to bring down this whole cybercrime graph that is exponentially growing, to start bringing it down. So that's the objective. But to achieve this, and this is my last slide, I promise, to achieve this, there are two prerequisites. And this is something, even before cognitive story started, I've been talking to all my customers. I've been about 15 years in cybersecurity, and I've been telling them, first one, integrated. Look at integrated security. Siloed, defense in depth era is over. It's not working. I can give you hundreds and hundreds of examples of defense in depth not working. So I buy those best of the breed technologies. I look at products. They don't work anymore. So you have to look at integrated security. And the simple mantra that I leave with most customers, if you find all this very complicated, just two things that you need to ask yourself when you take a security decision or when you build a security strategy. Speed of detection and speed of response. That's it. Any technology that I'm deploying in my organization, how is it contributing or improving my speed of detection? How am I detecting faster? And second thing is, how am I responding faster? Once I detect an attack has happened, how am I responding faster? How am I remediating faster? How am I ensuring that those policies that got violated are rectified? So when you start looking for answers for these two questions, you'll start talking about integrated security. So that's one important thing. Other important thing which is off late about 2 years or 3 years in making is, it's not just about integrating your security solutions, but it's also about integrating your intelligence. Earlier what happened, especially all these endpoint companies, they would have this whole threat intelligence that they gather from various endpoints across the globe. They would use them as their IP. You would have seen all these endpoint vendors coming and saying, I detected this particular incident, other guy could not detect it. Very common, right? I won't name anyone, but it happens all the time. A vendor A will come and say, this attack I've detected first, my technology works better, other guys doesn't work. And suddenly you'll see next day that guy will come up and say, this attack I detected first, the other guy can't. And you're left confused. So very, very important thing that is changing is, the most organized network of people is the underworld, the bad guys. They are the most organized people that you will see. But all the good guys are fighting their battles all alone. Everyone is like a diehard, I'm going to do it all, I'm going to make this world safe alone. The realization has come, it cannot happen. So either by force, by choice, by policy, all organizations are being pushed to start sharing intelligence. So that if somebody detects a particular attack, that intelligence is available to all customers, irrespective of that vendor's customers. So that the world is safer because underworld is compromised. So these are the two prerequisites that you will require. And of course, there is a whole framework, that's not the scope. There's a whole thing that IBM does on helping you build this whole journey. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Mr. Ben Herzberg from Imperva Inc., Research Group Manager, and he would be speaking on communicating vessels, forces behind attacks.
The green button, probably?
The green button.
Green. Hello? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Can you all hear me? Yes. In the back. Yes, great. Okay. So, good afternoon. First, thank you for the talk, Rakesh. I don't know where he is. The light is in my eyes. It was very interesting, and also if you add to that, like Rakesh was speaking about breaking the perimeter and getting inside and detecting threats versus preventing threats. And if you think about the transformation that we have all had or most had in the last few years about public cloud, for example, where is the perimeter? It becomes even more fascinating, I think, and I think that we're living in fascinating times where the architecture of organizations is changing. It's much easier to innovate and to start new projects, but that also brings a lot of challenges. For example, DevOps teams using the public cloud, uploading the United States voters database without protecting it with a password because it works, or any other similar incident. So this brings a lot of challenges. But that is not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about communicating vessels, something we learned in high school or maybe even before. Maybe even in the kindergarten, where we place different vessels and see how the water flows, and see how it relates to cybersecurity. So first of all, let's get this to work. Should it work? Is it connected to something else? No? I can just like tell you when you move to. When to move to the next slide? It should work? Okay. Okay, so this is me. Otherwise, I wouldn't know who I am without a slide. So this is me, one picture with a bird, one without a bird, so you don't get confused. My name is Ben Herzberg. I have 2 children, and I'm on a long travel, so I haven't seen them for a while. I come from penetration testing and offensive security up to head of offensive security, and then I also did a lot of development positions up to VP R&D of a cybersecurity startup company, bringing me to be the research manager for the research group manager for Imperva Application Security. And I'm going to speak mainly about DDoS attacks, denial of service attacks. And it's interesting because just yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, the Justice Department in the US made it publicly available that they arrested the person behind Mirai, the all-star of IoT botnets. So it's a good timing. And why am I speaking about DDoS attacks? First of all, our company is considered the world leader in DDoS attack mitigation. I'm not getting any commission, so I'm not going to sell anything, any of our products, but we do have our guys who can sell it. Does anyone know where this is? Someone must know where this is. What part of the world? No, nothing? Okay, so this is Thailand. Who said? Someone said Thailand? I don't have any prizes, but okay, so this is Thailand. This is Pattaya in Thailand, okay? And why am I starting my story in here? And this story does not relate to DDoS even, because it was a few years ago, like I think 4 or 5 years ago, where in Pattaya, Thailand, and it's a beautiful place, recommended, it was 2 a.m. and someone was sleeping in his room, okay? And 2 a.m., does anyone know what happened? Or am I bringing this new story? Okay. So at 2 a.m., someone was sleeping in his bed in a luxurious hotel in Pattaya, and then police came in and arrested him, okay? Now this guy used to work for a company in Israel, for a credit card company in Israel, and he was working in the premium service department, so he wasn't like a database administrator or anything like that. He was working for the premium service, and as a premium service, before he left the company or before he was fired, he managed to download the complete database of credit cards of that company, 2 million credit cards, a flat database of like select star from credit cards from a credit card company. And he managed to download that database and take it home with him. And then he tried to extort the credit card company. And you know that this is kind of risky, right, what he did? But he was trying to get some millions of dollars for that achievement. And eventually, he got caught. So this is another story. But they all share common grounds, don't worry. I'm not just here to tell stories. Does anyone know where this is? It's not in Thailand? Counter-Strike, okay. Who here played Counter-Strike ever? Okay. Okay. Oh, wow, you played a lot of Counter-Strike, Reina. Okay, so Counter-Strike, I used to play Counter-Strike as well. I think I'm pretty certain that I'm one of the best people in this room who played Counter-Strike, but I'm not sure, again, we can test that afterwards. But when we were playing Counter-Strike, and keep in mind that this was more than 15 years ago, when you lost a game, sometimes some of us would just attack the game server and make it crash. And when we had tournaments, we used to flood the Ventrilo and TeamSpeak speakers. Did you guys use Ventrilo and TeamSpeak? Like for voice chat when playing Counter-Strike? I don't know, I guess some of you. So we had voice servers, like when you're working with a team, you're saying like, you go left, I cover you. And then all of a sudden the line drops, your server drops, and you have no communication with your team, and then the other team wins. So DDoS attacks are not new, of course. And that brings me to the last point. And we can't not speak about cryptocurrency. How many of you has cryptocurrency and are okay, good. So I'm happy for every one of us who made some money. Again, my main sorrow is why didn't I buy enough? But then again, we publish a DDoS report because we protect a lot of organizations against DDoS attacks. And during this quarter, it was the first quarter where DDoS attacks against cryptocurrency exchanges was becoming one of the top industry vectors to be attacked, okay? And why are they attacked? They're attacked because you can make money out of it. You either attack an exchange, then you buy it cheaper because people lose confidence, or make other speculations and use the attack for it. So why did I tell you these 3 stories? I think that it all goes down to the communicating vessels, basically, everything in life, okay? But seriously, I think that if we make a very simple formula of cybersecurity, a very simple, overly simplistic, it would look like this. There is an attack when the attacker has a motivation, like they have something to gain from that attack. Now, this does not necessarily mean that they will make money out of that attack. For example, when we were playing Counter-Strike, it wasn't about money, but it was about winning. So you have a motivation. You need also capability. Now, a capability can be just downloading some script from the internet, getting yourself infected, then downloading something that won't get you infected, and then being able to attack. But of course, capabilities can also be much more than that. They can be writing custom malware, doing web application attacks, sophisticated web application attacks. They can be anything that you're capable of in terms of that specific attack. And then from that you deduct the risk. Like, for example, that guy who tried to extort the credit card company, like, he had the right motivation. We all have the right motivation to get rich. We all want to do it because we can buy things that will allow us to live better. He probably had the capability. He did download, and he didn't get caught when downloading the entire credit card database, okay? But that was risky, okay? So if he would have done the calculation, then maybe he would have done the same because he wouldn't estimate the risk correctly, right? But if he would have known that the risk was so high that even though he flew away like half the globe, like I did when I came here from Israel, so he also flew all the way to Thailand, so he won't get caught, so he won't be doing it even from an Israeli IP, even going to Tor from Israeli IP. And he took a lot of precautions when he did that, but still there was a lot of risk. Because when you say, I have the entire credit card database, people start investigating, like who could have had the entire credit card database. And then he was also bragging with his friends in WhatsApp, like saying, I'm going to get rich. So it was like doing 1 plus 1. And then plus protection. So protection, the better protection you have, the more it costs to attack. Protection goes against the capability, right? Because if you have good protection, then you're limiting the capability of someone to launch an attack against you. Okay, so about DDoS attacks, okay? DDoS attacks changed in the last few years. In the last 2 or 3 years, they changed dramatically. If until 2 or 3 years ago, most of the attacks were mostly volumetric attacks, mostly dealing with inflicting the most bandwidth, sending the most bandwidth to the organization, that have changed, okay? Now, the reason this has changed, it was very easy, and it still happens today, to cause what is called reflective amplification attacks. Meaning I'm sending a lot of requests to DNS servers, for example, and then I'm creating a lot of traffic on the attacked organization. But it's easier to block these attacks, okay? But in the last few years, we have more and more IoT technology being used, and that's like the other side of the technology, but then it blends in when there's enough motivation for an attack. A lot of these IoT devices comes with little to no security. Not all of them, not even most of them. It's not like a lot of people are saying IoT is insecure. IoT is not necessarily insecure, but true within the huge numbers of IoT devices. And I'm talking about anything that's not a laptop, a computer, a server, or a mobile phone or a tablet. Let's call IoT, let's define IoT as everything else. There are a lot of systems which comes with default passwords, which comes with basic vulnerabilities, etc. So there's the IoT, there's a lot of additional mobile phones with little security, or let's say, for example, when Pokemon Go was released worldwide, in my country it wasn't released, okay? It was restricted. I don't know why, but it was restricted. Yet my son wanted to play Pokemon Go. So what did he do? He downloaded an APK off the market and installed it on his Android device. Now his Android device doesn't have any sensitive information on it, but his Android device, if that APK is malicious, it can be a tool to launch other attacks. It can be part of increasing the capability of the attacker to launch an attack. So there will be over 6 billion mobile phones, smartphones by 2020, and some of them will be infected. A large number of them will be infected. And from mobile devices, you can launch pretty sophisticated attacks because you have the built-in foundations, you have browsers built in, you have a lot of platform to work with. And about IoT devices, there's going to be, well, it depends which analyst you ask, right? But soon enough, in 2 years, we will know who was right. So between 30, 35, and 50 billion IoT devices. So those can be healthcare devices, those can be home security systems, et cetera, we will have that much more of them by 2020. So attackers like to attack IoT devices, not just for DDoS attacks. We have seen, for example, attacks for credential theft, et cetera, done from IoT devices. Why? First of all, because they're a low-hanging fruit. It's easy. Why is it easy to take advantage of IoT devices? So like PCs or servers or laptops, they also have internet connection, right? So no advantage in there. You can execute code on IoT devices the same way you do, or maybe in a different way, but you can execute code on IoT devices as well as you can do on your PC. But then again, it's easier to scan, for example, using Shodan or other network tools when you know that there's a new, like last month, new vulnerable version of a Zyxel router. You can easily scan and get 200,000 IPs using that modem because it's using a custom HTTP header when you're trying to scan it. So it's easier to attack IoTs, and also the hackability. Like I said, not all IoT devices come, in order to publish an IoT device, in order to sell it, you must have security vulnerabilities, but a lot of them has security vulnerabilities built in, like default passwords, like easy to exploit vulnerabilities. So that is why IoT devices makes it cheaper. If we spoke about the motivation of an attacker and the cost of the attack gets cheaper, the attacker can get more capability. Once you get more capability, you have more of a motivation to attack. You have more chances of attacks. So if I would like to take control of 100,000 PCs, it would be definitely possible. If I would want to take control of 100,000 IoT devices, that would be possible like before dinner, okay? Before lunch, okay? So it would be much easier for an attacker. So how did that change the DDoS attack landscape, okay? It changed the DDoS attack because in large reflective amplification attacks, for example, you're sending a lot of traffic to the organization. You might get their lines saturated, but it's relatively a stupid attack. You're getting to your organization, or your ISP may get lots of DNS responses, for example, and they're saying, I didn't ask those questions. I should block all the DNS responses. And then it's easier to mitigate. It's not like eating a cheesecake easy. It's harder, but it's still easier to deal with those than to deal with someone who actually owns a botnet having 20,000 devices and telling them, okay, I want you all to send a small SYN packet or a small UDP packet or a GRE communication so that the router will have to decapsulate the GRE traffic. Okay, so the attack is far more effective when you're using IoT devices or when you have a lot of scale. So one of the changes that we have seen, which was interesting in the last few months, we've seen a change in DDoS attacks. Now, when I'm saying a change, it does not mean that the old attacks are not there, but we're seeing more and more of a different type of attack. So these are typical real screenshots of how large DDoS attacks looks like, okay? It's almost always a triangle. So the attacker sends the command to the botnet, then it starts gathering more power until they all get the command to attack, and then it dies down when the attacker finishes the attack. You can see that as well in here. You can see that as well in there, although different triangles, but still a triangle. And this is very typical of what a DDoS attack looks like on network communication. It looks the same on this side as well as this side, right? But in the last few months, what we've seen is what we call pulse wave attacks. So we're seeing attacks like this, where there are short bursts of an attack, then nothing. Because why is this happening? First of all, because the attackers who are using their network to attack the organization, first of all, instead of just doing an attack, stopping, which is ineffective, they're smarter now, and they're giving their CNC a list of targets. So when you're not getting attacked, someone else is. It just switches between, like this minute attack this organization, that minute attack another organization. Now, why is this so effective in terms of what attackers do? First of all, a lot of mitigation solutions requires manual labor, manual configuration changes when you're under attack. Now, or manual work in diverting traffic to a cloud solution, for example, to take care of the attack. Now, when you're doing an attack that stops after a few seconds, then someone does the configuration, then again, it goes back to the organization. Again, it really depends on what mitigation solution the organization is doing. That becomes very powerful. The connections sometimes go back and forth, and causes issues like null routing, etc. So this is a trend that we've been seeing around DDoS attack in the last few months. So in conclusion, first of all, we are not doomed, okay? Let's not get, like every cybersecurity presentation has this, attacks are getting higher. Of course, they are getting higher. We have more and more, our organizations are getting more complex. Like I began with for example, the move to public cloud and other changes, and more people working from home, more complex structures, not just like a perimeter, like a castle that has a wall, and once you cross the wall, you know that someone is inside. So everything changed, both for the good and for the bad. Like we only need, as professionals, to react to those changes. We need to provide solutions that will aggregate attacks and tell organizations a richer, fuller story and help them save time when analyzing alerts. And DDoS attacks, as part of that cybersecurity world, we need to keep challenging ourselves and see how we can create better solutions and better protection for the organizations. Well, just like a 15-second or 20-second explanation of how we do it and why I believe that what we are doing is the right thing. And afterward, if you want, you can hear it from our local team. So first of all, we have points of presence around the world. Each one of them is a fully functional scrubbing center. So we don't need to divert traffic in case there are attacks, etc. And then the whole network that we have is an SDN that knows how to offload the bad traffic in case there are mega attacks. Like we had 700 gigabit attacks. So in case there is such a huge attack, we know how to do that automatically. And again, this is like, if you want to hear more, of course, by all means. The Indian point, okay. So this is my third time around this year in India because we focus a lot in this local market, and we think that it's rapidly developing, and I'm sure that you all agree with me. At least most of you. I hope that you all agree with me. We have our own offices in here in India, and over the last year we also opened 2 points of presence in India, in Mumbai and Delhi, and we're planning to open more in the next year because, like I said, we believe that this is a greatly growing market. So thank you very much, and I'll try to do that. Bahut Dhanavad.
Thank you, Ben, for the enriching session. Next up, we have Dr. Kaushik Saha, CTO, Samsung R&D Institute, India, and he would be speaking on trustworthiness in IoT scenario.
Am I audible? So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to talk about this abstruse concept of trustworthiness, which, although abstruse and vague, it's one of the basic components of human and organizational behavior. And I'm going to talk about it in the context of another very unknown and horrid animal called IoT, about which precious little is known really. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of my two colleagues, Mr. Gokul Narasimha and Anil Yadav, who have helped me to put this mess together. Gokul, would you please oblige us by showing everybody your mug? So after this talk, you can shoot him while I make myself scarce. All right. So I would also say that the previous speaker has done the groundwork for me and helped me a great deal. So Shalom Ben, thank you very much for doing the background work for my talk. Now that being the case, let's talk about trustworthiness. Then we will talk about the Samsung's perspective on trustworthiness in the IoT scenario. So I have to do all these 9 agenda items in about 19 minutes from now. So obviously, I will promise to be very fast, and I will be very fast. So first of all, we go through the concepts of trustworthiness for machines and software firmware that is deployed in the IoT platforms and applications. And then I will show you how some of Samsung solutions implement these slightly difficult concepts. All right. First of all, trustworthiness needs a definition. As I said, it's a basic human behavioral tenet. In the context of machines, we will define it as trustworthiness is that a system will do exactly what it is required to do, and it will not do anything else. Right? So therefore, the device will function as expected, as per its user's manual or specifications in given situations. Any other situations where there is a disruption in the environment, where there is a physical or data attack, or in a situation of human error in operation, it will still not do anything that is not known or that is not expected from its specifications. This is a very tall order. even in the human world, this is a very tall order. All right? So in the current scenario, pretty much all this exists in very embryonic form. The IoT domain is evolving. There are no known frameworks of trustworthiness in the IoT domain, at least. There are certain trustworthiness models and frameworks in scenarios like e-commerce, let's say. Some work has been done in that. But there is no proven trustworthiness framework in the IoT domain, simply because one of the reasons being it requires collaboration and exchange of information between many domains. For example, between IT, knowledge, exchange of knowledge, cybersecurity, and then there are these very important aspects of legal and compliance. Because IoT in many cases deals with very sensitive private data of individuals, so there are legal and compliance issues naturally. And then of course the actual challenges posed by the engineering. Also, more importantly, an IoT device comes from the producer or the designer to the final user through a fairly complex and long supply chain, all along which there are loopholes and vulnerabilities. And most of these have not been addressed till date. That being the case, to venture into the IoT space without knowledge and without ensuring secure systems may have consequences in terms of financial, legal, compliance, loss of goodwill, and operationally deleterious consequences. This is obviously a no-brainer, and then securing the IoT ecosystem is a great challenge. These are the various, let's say, key ingredients, pillars, dimensions of trustworthiness: privacy of data, privacy of device, privacy of the service, safety, so that it does not have consequences which lead to actual physical harm to the user, reliability in the face of when placed in a harsh environment, the device should still keep functioning, resilience to error, so therefore it should be resilient to, for example, operator error or something like that. Interoperability is a very important aspect, because any user should not be confined to using or buying devices only from one vendor. Therefore, the devices and services of one vendor should talk to those of another. Availability, maintenance, what happens when things go bad, what happens when vulnerabilities are exposed, what are the vendor policies to address those, safety of the human, laws, regulations, etc., etc. The way to enable these pillars or to support these pillars is through standardization of each of these components. So any set of IoT devices which are standardized in terms of these sections, so to speak, or these components, will be able to win the user's trust, so to speak. Right. So what are the key issues that we have seen till date in terms of ensuring trustworthiness? For example, a lot of, as I said, private and personal data is connected by IoT devices. For example, wearables, through which you may actually gather the a user's health data, health-related data. This is obviously very private and personal data. Now, one has to ensure somehow, by legislation or whatever, that secondary usage of data, that is provisioning of this data to another party, which was not there to start with in the entire game, may have unintended consequences. So there aren't yet any policies or legal frameworks to address these. Then, of course, there's the problem, the very physical problem of upward and downward compatibility of the data, as well as the device. So suppose the next generation of devices comes in, or the next generation of services comes in, then what happens? Can you upgrade the existing devices by just over-the-air patching? Are over-the-air patches possible? Etc., etc. Then the third thing is data portability. So suppose I decide to change my entire IoT setup from a vendor X to a vendor Y on a certain date, then what happens to all the previous data? So this is a very interesting example and a very maybe trivial, but it leads to important questions. For example, you have an IoT-enabled smart home. Once the present owner sells off the house, then all the data that has been collected by the IoT devices dispersed in that home, whom does that data belong to after after that particular residence has been sold? Does it go where the old owner has gone, or does it belong to the new owner? This is a question that is very difficult to answer. All right. So these are some trustworthiness frameworks which are being developed by various consortia. For example, the NIST, the OTA. Then this is a very important consortium to be aware of, which is the OCF, Open Connectivity Framework, which enables seamless connectivity and service and device discovery between IoT nodes. All right. Now, since it's seamless, it ought to have a great deal of data transparency. But then this throws up new challenges in terms of the security of the data or security of the communication between these devices. So the goal is to develop a security, privacy, and sustainability trust framework for IoT devices. Obviously, the inputs of these consortia will go to the standard coordination bodies under ISO or IEC and W3C. All right. This is a topic that is very important and interesting in terms of the theoretical content. How do you model trust and trustworthiness? This work has been actually going on. By modeling, I mean how do you identify variables, input variables, which indicate trust? What are the mathematical formulae which will give you some output in the end saying that these being the value of these inputs, this particular vendor, individual, user, whatever is trustworthy. Right. So this has been a lot of work done in the organizational behavior domain for the last 30 years in modeling trustworthiness of individuals and teams. Some work has been done in the last 10 years or so for modeling the trustworthiness of e-commerce vendors, for example. In that work, not only static analysis has been done, but also some time-dependent Markovian kind of analysis has been done. So somebody has written higher order difference equations for this kind of time-dependent behavior. Some of the references are given at the bottom. So interested people may look at these. This is, as I said, a very interesting mathematical area also. But the need for IoT domain specifically is that no one existing model will suffice. So what people are saying is, let's have a pool of models for different IoT deployment scenarios, then build a trustworthiness model an adaptive trustworthiness model, which changes its morphology depending on the particular scenario at that particular time. This itself, you will realize, is a mathematical challenge, because how do you decide when to change? Right. So this is something in which a lot of theoretical work can be done. All right. So with this slide, I shall end the first principles and then go on to the implementational aspects. So there are 4 key areas of measuring trustworthiness, and thereby if we ensure high performance indices in these areas, then we can go a few steps towards building a trustworthy set of devices. So as device vendors or service vendors, we must ensure adherence to security principles, especially security processes in the development of devices, sensors, cloud services. We must adhere to data security principles, for example, data storage and in data transmission. These are well-known principles, but you will appreciate that in the large field of simply the numerically large field of IoT devices, this problem is just magnified many times. All right? It's simply the same problem as standard IT practices on a much larger scale. All right? Then, of course, there are compliance requirements which must be met, especially in terms of, for example, children's privacy or protection of children. So what I will do now is concentrate on these two parts and try to illustrate with examples how this has been done in our Samsung IoT solutions. Because in the end, I have to earn my salary for today. All right, so some of the best practices in IoT security are, of course, authentication of the device with the cloud, authentication between devices while communicating between devices, strong encryption methods and integrity protocols once the communication has started, pairing, onboarding, registration of devices and user should be secure. One very important thing is, as soon as vulnerabilities are discovered, the security updates and patches should be sent out over the air and installed within the shortest possible time. One important thing at the level of hardware and firmware is isolated execution, secure storage, execution of authentic code only. Code from malafide or unauthenticated sources should not be executed, and there should not be any backdoors in the system or the code. For example, one example of backdoor is many of our IoT nodes, etc., are built with the Linux operating system, right? Now, any standard Linux deployment or a build will have certain sockets and services associated with FTP and Telnet. These are highly insecure and not at all used in IoT, in communications in IoT. But yet, because of a default build, they may be left enabled. So such non-secure services and sockets should be disabled when you build your binary for an IoT device. All right, at this point, half of my time is up. So now I will go on to describe the Samsung Arctic IoT trusted platform. This is our interpretation of trusted IoT devices and services. It is the platform which enables the Samsung IoT ecosystem, which is based on the Arctic hardware, the Tizen operating system. The Tizen operating system is really an avatar or an incarnation of the Linux operating system. It has got a Linux kernel, but the middleware and the application framework is different from, let's say, Ubuntu or Android. And then at the very basis, the enabler for the connectivity is called the IoTVT communication stack, which is basically an implementation of the OCF standard for communications in IoT. All right, so this is a sort of this is a picture which describes the hardware of the Arctic. So the Arctic platform comes in 3 form factors at different levels of capability. At the very bottom is the Arctic 1, which is a very small processor. It's a MIPS processor with a reduced instruction set, and it's clocked at around 150 megahertz or something like that. This is the kind of processor which you would deploy with a sensor, a very elementary sensor like a temperature sensor or something. How much time do I have? Am I already through 15 minutes? I thought I had 20. I'll finish in exactly 3 minutes now. So how the security part is implemented in this is, so any such a node will act as a source of data, will communicate with the Arctic cloud services, which are managed by Samsung, and then there will be communication between the device and the application, which may reside on a mobile phone, through the cloud. So the cloud enables the communication. So obviously you will realize that all this communication will have to be protected. These will have to be secure channels. And then on the hardware side, there will be facilities like secure boot, secure OS, and secure storage to enable the device security. All right. So since I'm out of time, I will just describe very fast the various facilities that we have at the hardware level and the communication level to ensure security. So for the purpose of device protection, we have, for example, something called secure JTAG. Some of you may know about JTAG. It's an interface that is used to probe the device to debug your application or the firmware code during development. JTAG is also a backdoor into the device, and therefore default JTAG is not provided in a protected device. We have a version of the JTAG called secure JTAG, which prevents access to unauthorized parts of the device, but while enabling easy development and debugging. We also have what is called secure boot, which means only the boot image which is coming from an authentic source will be booted, and this authenticity will be checked by checking the key signature or the hash of the boot image, and this signing is provided by a Samsung service. So that Samsung service is called the Samsung Key Management Service and Samsung Code Signer Portal. So you can submit your boot image binary to the Samsung Code Signer Portal, which will provide the keys for this, sign it digitally, and then provide the same keys to the device and provide you with a signed binary. As the boot image, as the image system boots the boot image, at various stages of the booting, the signature will be repeatedly checked, so that at every stage of the boot, you have a signed and authenticated binary. There are further complications, there are further facilities in this, but I seem to have run out of time. The last thing I will describe is the secure OS mode of this device. So once the device is booted, there will be actually two operating systems co-resident on this. One is the default Linux or Tizen or whatever. But whenever you want to do secure operations like extracting keys from the secure storage, or you want to do actual encryption and decryption of your messages, then you would like to do it in a secure zone which cannot be probed by malicious applications. So this is done with the help of the so-called trust zone hardware of ARM. This is an ARM CPU, but the use of the trust zone hardware is enabled by the secure execution environment of the Samsung RTIC processors. All right. So with that, I will more or less say the last message. So given these facilities, you can Samsung IoT platform enables you to or facilitates building an IoT application with high security level with the easiest possible APIs, right? As a result, we claim that the trustworthiness of our devices and cloud IoT services is enhanced. So with that, I will finish my address. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Saha, for the session. Next up, we have Aditya Kakrania, Director, Security Innovation, and he would be speaking on automotive security.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to be talking about automotive security, and this also falls under the purview of IoT. So I thank Mr. Kaushik for introducing IoT and the security principles behind IoT and the theoretical work behind the IoT framework. Because today, what I want to do is not talk about the security of cars, but about how to break the security of cars. I've visited pretty much all of the keynotes since yesterday and today, and I think I might be the only one who's talking about anti-security here. But this is not because I'm a bad person. It's because I firmly believe that we cannot fix anything until we first break it. So what I want to do is spend the next 15 minutes talking about some of the resources that you can use to explore breaking cars, and also some of the attacks that have already happened in the last few years. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be light. I'm not going to be talking about anything theoretical. Like I said, also known as fun with cars. So I hope you enjoy it. So when speaking about security or breaking security, the first thing that an attacker needs to do is find entry points into the system. If I cannot send you data, if I cannot send you any kind of input, I cannot affect you. If you don't hear me, you will not be able to react to me. So I need to find a way to send information to the car. Now out here, I have outlined some of the very basic entry points into a car. There's a front sensor and a rear sensor to detect collisions. I'll come to an example of that later. There is the LiDAR. You've seen these on top of, okay, I had an image here of a car. That's not here. But you've seen these self-driving cars. They have this beacon on top. That's the LiDAR. It's a rotating laser imaging system. It stands for light detection and ranging. So it detects objects and also the distance to that object. And these things rotate continuously to be able to detect any obstacles in the path of the car. That's the LiDAR. But again, this is also an entry point into the system, right? Because the LiDAR is detecting data from the outside world and then sending it inside the car for processing. So that's another entry point. We are all familiar with the car radio. It's picking up signals, radio signals, and it's playing through the music system or the entertainment system. So far, I haven't come across an attack that has been conducted over an AM or FM channel, but let's give it some time, or maybe one of you will do it. Cars also have cellular connectivity now, where if you're stuck in a jam or you've lost your keys, you can call a helpline and they can unlock your car for you because it's got a SIM card, right? Your car is also connected or receiving data from the satellite, GPS, pretty much everyone has it. Now, it's not like the GPS is trying to hack you, but if you've read in the last few months, there have been reports of people's cars going crazy around the KGB complex in Moscow because they suddenly think that they're somewhere else. Basically, even GPS signals are being spoofed right now, so people's cars go crazy. There's also the ODB port. This is the onboard diagnostic port, and this is what it generally looks like on cars. Everyone's car has this. So this is what we use for testing. And you can buy a OBD to USB connector connected to your laptop and install freely available software, and you're in business. A caveat here, please do not try and send messages to your car without knowing what's happening. You might brick your car. You've heard about bricking your phone. You might be bricking your car. So read about it. I'll provide you the right resources. But let me hurry up because this counter is going really fast. So we, at Security Innovation, we did a LiDAR attack on a car. This is about 2 years ago. Bought $60 worth of over-the-counter components, sent low-powered laser signals to the LiDAR, again, detecting objects. And we were able to fool the car into thinking that there were people or objects or even walls, when we faked a wall in front of the car, it came to an abrupt halt. When we placed an object in front of it, it actually swerved around it. But there were actually no objects, right? So if you think of the LiDAR being used as a remote attack, someone standing, we were able to do this from 100 meters away. So someone standing on the road 100 meters away being able to move your car without your authorization, I think that's an attack. Okay, so I would like to also mention, Mr. Kaushik told you about IoT. Earlier, Mr. Rakesh was talking about how we have been testing with, we've been keeping perimeter defenses and moving on to cognitive defenses lately. But one thing that hasn't changed, again, there was a graphic here, but I'll describe it to you. It's not very difficult. It's a triangle. On one side is security. On the other end is features. And on the third end is usability. So security, features, usability. These are the three opposite ends when we deal with security and features. But for every product that I've come across, I've been doing security work since 2002. Every product, be it a word processor, it could be your car now, or any kind of product. Initially, when these products come out, companies pack as many features as they can into the product because the number of features is what sells at that time. My word processor has 75 features. This one has only 20. The customer will prefer something which has 75 features, even if it costs a little bit more. Make them super easy to use. Usability is important. And release them as fast as possible, right? Time to market was also very important. And all of this time, security is usually ignored. If you look at people talking about IoT devices right now, IoT does have a bad name because initially a lot of products came out, they didn't care about security, and still, we don't trust IoT. We say it's got to be insecure. But give it some time, in between after the release, it's all quiet until somebody decides to start hacking stuff. And then companies feel the pinch because they're losing money, and then security becomes the key market differentiator, where you might only be getting 20 features compared to 70 features, but you know that this product is more secure. You will go for that product. So with everything that's been happening in the last 20 years, products start out like this, and then eventually security takes over, and that's what's happening with cars too right now. The number of features that have increased in cars over the years, over the decades, are many more than this, but this is just a very quick run-through of what we've got. Stability control, onboard diagnostics, way back in the day, GPS navigation, etc., came in 1995, rear view cameras, etc. Now we're all used to all of this. Okay, now I can't do without this graphic. Okay, I'll go back. Okay, so now I have to ask you to imagine that there is a car here. I don't know why graphics are missing, but my animation works. There is a car there. This is, on the left is the back end of the car where the trunk is. There's a seatbelt, mirror, etc. So basically, these are all features in a car that I attempted to show. And they need to communicate, right? Like if you press a button, the mirror needs to move, or the window needs to go down. If you press a button, the trunk needs to open, right? These signals need to travel somehow. So all of these features are in the car at separate locations. The way they talk to each other is through a bus, right? Like, now this is my squiggly diagram, but these are basically cables running throughout your car. But all of these are connected to the central bus. Actually, there is more than one bus, but for simplicity, as it says, overly simplified car networking, I'm just showing one bus. All of these different features communicate over the single bus. But the mirror cannot really send a very intelligent signal to other parts of the car. So what we need are ECUs, these electronic control units, small computers with processors. So these are the ones that will receive and send signal to the mirror to say, okay, the person has pressed a button for all mirrors, tilt in, or all windows go down. Or, if you have cruise control in your car, you press a button and your car starts speeding up. You press a button, the message goes to the ECU. ECU sends a message to the accelerator to speed up. So that's pretty much the basic of communication inside a car. I hope you could have seen it. It was a pretty nice looking car. But that's how signals travel. At least we got this because that's what's most important. Now, earlier in this slide, one of the graphics that you had was the OBD port. What that allows us to do is when I hook it up to my laptop through USB, is send messages on this bus, right? So all of these ECUs, electronic control units, will also send messages which are picked up by, the seatbelt might send a message which gets picked up by the accelerator, or the accelerator sends a message that gets picked up by the locks, because certain cars have features that, once you start driving it, the locks engage by themselves. So the accelerator might be sending some signal, but once we plug into the OBD port, we are allowed to send messages of our own, and that's when things become interesting. We can send messages that confuse the car. One of the tests that we did, and this was simulated, this was not on a real car, and I invite you to do the same. I'll provide links to car simulators in the end, is we had a car going at about 60 kilometers an hour. We suddenly sent a message saying that current speed is 0. Right? Now, there are other sensors, other ECUs that picked up speed is 60, suddenly speed is 0. What do you think they're thinking? These control units, right? They think, oh, we're probably in a crash because we don't know how to stop that fast. The car has crashed. So in that test, what happened was in the simulator, the airbags got deployed. So if we try this in real life, it's possible that being able to send a message to the bus, in the bus that gets picked up by different components, that the speed is suddenly 0 will deploy the airbag. And that's kind of a bad denial of service for the driver. Might get hurt while the car is moving. But very interesting things can happen when we send these malicious messages into the ECU. Now, there are many ECUs. In the previous diagram, I think I had 5. Typically, your car on the road right now will have about 10 ECUs. More advanced cars have a lot more ECUs, and I will show you an example of that that's coming up. But these are some of the very common ECUs that are present in cars today. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but it's pretty straightforward. I would like to talk about relative complexity, why cars are very interesting to test these days. The 787 Dreamliner has 7 million lines of code. The F-22 Raptor has 2 million lines of code. Of course, I've hidden the number of lines of code that the 2016 Ford F-150 has, because if this was an interactive session, I would have asked you to guess. But it's about 130 million lines of code. And the reason for that is, again, something I would ask you, but let me just say in the interest of time, that the Dreamliner is written, the code for that is written by 1 or 2 vendors. The F-22 Raptor, the code is written by a single vendor from scratch. Our Ford F-150, it's got multiple OEMs, multiple vendors providing features into this very feature-rich car. It's got more than 100 ECUs. I told you that your typical car right now has around 10 ECUs. They have more than 100 ECUs, 50 antennas, work over 15 frequencies. They have more than 2 miles of cables running across the car. So basically, I just wanted to show how complex certain cars can be. And that makes it very exciting for a person like me who wants to try and break it and see how we can then later fix it. Because these feature-rich cars that come up with all of these gadgets and cool things right now, they're very low on security. So let's break them first, and by the time it reaches your car, hopefully that technology will be safer. There is this example of the Jeep, the Chrysler Jeep hack. This happened about 2 years ago. Because time's up, and I would like you to just go and YouTube this on how some people took over a moving Chrysler Jeep, moved it off the road, or before that they turned on the wipers, they turned on the air conditioning, made it very hot, they were able to control the music, they were able to disable the brakes, which is very, very scary. And they were all able to do this through the entry point of cellular, because this car had this technology called Uconnect. It's for entertainment, navigation, et cetera, et cetera. But then that eventually gives the car an IP address. Anything with an IP address, there are a bunch of people trying to break it. So these are some of the things they were able to do. This is how you get started. There's just one single book. It's free online, written by Craig Smith, The Car Hacker's Handbook. Take a look at it. It's not very complicated. There are parts that you can buy for relatively cheap and play around. If you don't want to buy physical parts, you can play with the instrument cluster simulator. That's also available online on GitHub. And it simulates a car and the ECU, and you can send messages to it and see what else is happening. If nothing else, just DuckDuckGo and check for car hacking resources. Every month, there's a lot more people coming out and publishing their work. So with that, I would say thank you, and good day.
Session. So with this, we end our last leg of keynotes. Next up, we have our Cybersecurity Courseware launch. And before the launch, I would like to request you to please take the front seats. There are plenty of vacant seats here. So, yeah? Okay. So, as part of the National Cybersecurity Skill Building Endeavor, National Sector Skill Council and DSCI have developed Cybersecurity Courseware. In this session, we'll be launching 2 courseware. First one on Penetration Tester, and second on Security Infrastructure Specialist. Now for the launch, I would like to invite Dr. Sandhya Chintala, CEO, NASSCOM Sector Skill Council. Dr. Sandhya. Ms. Rama Vedashri, CEO, DSCI. Mr. Anand Pandey, CISO, GSTN. Then Mr. Clayton Jones, MD, APAC, ISC Square. And Mr. Vinayak Godse, Senior Director, DSCI.
So good afternoon to all of you. If you remember in the yesterday's morning inaugural keynote, both I and also our NASSCOM chairman Raman Roy talked about how cybersecurity industry development is a key priority for us. And skills development, overall skills development in the new digital technologies, but also skills development in cybersecurity is a key priority for the industry, because this is one domain where I think the skills gap is the most acute, not only in user organizations and government agencies, but it is equally or more acute in IT industry and also academia. If you remember, in the last annual Information Security Summit, we had a session where we talked about the NASSCOM Sector Skills Council and DSCI's initiative in terms of the skills development exercise, where we built these job roles and qualification packs for 30 roles. And for 10 roles, we went into curriculum development. We had the opportunity to launch that in last ASS. And subsequently, we have driven adoption of those 5 courses in terms of faculty development, including a special focus on faculty development of women faculty, so that we encourage more women to get into the security field, and of course students and their assessment. Now that journey continues. We are putting a little more focus on that, and there are a few more courses that is getting launched, which I would request Dr. Sandhya to talk about more.
Thank you, Rama. I will just briefly inform you about the work done, precisely about 3 to 4 minutes. As you're well aware, with the latest technologies that are coming to fore and the cross-pollination of these technologies, just like the IoT that you've heard before with other domains, it's very critical that cybersecurity professionals come into play. It's also very obvious, as you all know, that the gap between supply and demand is steeply rising, and we need to do something about this. So in line with the vision of NASSCOM DSCI, Cybersecurity Task Force under Government of India, and directly under the leadership of the Prime Minister himself, DSCI has been working with member companies, its partners, and with Sector Skill Council, ITITS, as its knowledge partner. And these tracks have been developed, as you see down here. I need that on show, please. Out of these 11 tracks, what they have done very amazingly in collaboration with IC Square Sons and all of the companies, ISACA too, and all our member companies, is designed an enviable scenario, which is a career lattice or an occupational map. You see the tracks at the bottom and the various organizational consulting orgs, the IT services organizations, and the user organizations being covered under the various entry-level jobs, middle and senior. This seems to have captured the imagination of the globe, and it's still relevant, and we revisit this every year. Out of the very many documents that have been highlighted in small circular bullets, 2 are being released today. You would have received this pamphlet around, where the 11 courses, which are the highlights, have been actually articulated, out of which 6 are on board. 2 are being presented today, and 3 will be available before end of year, financial year. These are the 2 books, Penetrators and Security Infrastructure Specialist. Having said this, I have appeal to make to you. All of this does not matter if we do not have your support. The support that we require is professionals as master trainers to help train the people right across the supply side and companies, small, large, and medium. We would like you to go to the website here to register. This will be hyperlinked to the Cyber DSCI website too, where you can register as a master trainer, get licensed. You can in turn train other trainers, and this licensed trainer will actually be able to use all these courseware as flipbooks, and shortly will be available as Kindle for a small price, and this can go through the ecosystem. Kindly do this. These are various sites, it's just a medium of the side which you can actually see. So if we take this across to universities and college, each of these courses are about 500 to 600 hours. And what we find is how we have actually structured this program for the university so that it can be integrated into the existing UGC or AICT program, either for engineers or non-engineering programs. It has the appeal as well as the approval of the Ministry of Human Resource Development, the Ministry of Skills and Entrepreneurship, Ministry of labor and employment. And AICT and AGC have absolutely endorsed this as a bachelor's of vocation. More information about this can be available on the site. Having said this, we feel that this information and courseware, with your support, as master trainers, can go across to companies, to universities, traditional trainers, and also be put on an aggregator model that NASSCOM is working with the Sector Skill Council for a MOOC rendition of the same. All of this subsequently will lead to a collaborative certification which has the Government of India's logo on it. It is the Sector Skill Council NASSCOM, DSCI with a QR code. So ladies and gentlemen, I would request people on the dais to first release the document. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would request you all to take your seats in the audience.
Just ask Yashoda to take it. Don't worry about it.
All right, thank you. Next up, now to showcase the first of its kind study on privacy in mobile application by Arka Consulting, I would like to call upon Ms. Shivangi Nadkarni, co-founder and CEO at Arka Consulting. Ms. Shivangi.
Sorry.
Okay, while they get that up, good afternoon, everybody. It's always, sometimes a challenge to take what I call the slog overs of any conference. And but believe me, I think we have some interesting results to share. So just to give a prelude, we at Arka have set up a privacy testing lab. And we always get questions about from random people asking, should I install this app? What is going on with this app? Is it taking access to my microphone? Is it taking access to my camera, etc.? So about 3 months ago, we decided to do a study for ourselves to really see what is going on with some of the apps, specifically from India, because you get a lot of media about what's happening with all the popular apps that all of us use, but we really have no idea about what's going on with apps in India. Also, sometimes I feel that the debate, and this is a personal opinion, there's so much of focus when it comes to privacy on what's happening with Aadhaar, that a lot of us tend to ignore, a bigger, darker sort of what goes on with apps that all of us randomly install on our phones. So that's how we got onto this study. So this is a summary report, and you can download a report later. So as I said, we are what is called a mobile-first nation. We have so many people using mobiles, and people are just downloading apps. Apparently, Google Play Store downloads crossed 6 billion for India. And so the questions that I just discussed, what kind of information is being used, how much of it is being shared with third parties, what kind of tracking and profiling is going on. So that was the focus of this study. We did it only for Android apps, and we tested 100 apps. The SKU of this is from the Google Play Store. The terminology is what is as per the Google Play Store. And we tested it for 5 key privacy principles. So first is what we call dangerous permissions. I'm sure all of you are aware of what dangerous permissions are. These are permissions that Android classifies as dangerous because it takes access to sensitive personal information of yours from your phone. We found that about 6 to 10 are the number of dangerous permissions taken on an average, by about 40 apps. So 7.9 was the average number of dangerous permissions taken by Indian apps today. Okay, and the laggards, as we call it, communication apps 14.5, mobile wallets 12.4, shopping apps 10.8, medical apps 10.3. Okay, the types of dangerous permissions taken, 85% have access to what is called write external storage, which means you have an SD card, the app has permission to write onto that SD card. Okay, read phone state, 75%. It means that they have access to your device ID, what calls you're making, when you're making the calls, whom you're calling, the entire log. Okay. 72% have access to find location, while 71% have access to course location. Now, while you're using, say, a taxi hailing app, there's every need to have access to your find location. Why would all, 72% apps need access to find location? That's a question. Okay. These are some more stats. 75% have access to your device IDs and call details. 52% can read your SMSs. About 70% have access to external storage. Here's the interesting thing. 45% have access to your camera, okay? And 43% can read all your contacts. So these were statistics which kind of came as surprises to us. The other thing is we tried to test whether apps are taking more information than required, okay? So we did a test, and this is not foolproof, where we said that let's see if the app continues to function after we take away permission for a particular dangerous permission. Not that this is foolproof, because a lot of apps are so designed that even if it's not required, if you take away the permission, the app stops functioning, okay? So we came up with this index, and we found that 67% is actually what we call the permission to function correlation index. It essentially data sharing with analytics and advertising providers, we said let's take a look. 7.4 is the average number of third-party advertising analytics providers with whom data is shared. 94% of apps share that data. The top advertisers we've listed, most of them are either from the Google stable or from the Baidu stable. Then we also did what is called a network flow analysis to see where data is going out when an app is on or when it's running in the background. This is, I mean, bulk of it goes to the US, which is not surprising given that most of the embedded SDKs are from companies in the US followed by companies in China. Okay, so this just corroborates what we found. Then we moved on to something which is more matter of fact, which we expect, which is availability of a simple notice. Most of us don't read it because we tend to just scan through and say and agree. But it's surprising that 69% of the apps don't even give you that option. Okay, there is no explicit, what is called explicit user consent. We found that only 36% apps that we tested have a link which is operational, linking to something called a privacy policy. We've not yet looked at what the policy says, notice says. Okay. Surprisingly, the index score was as low as 25% for banks and fintech categories, both separately when we tested out. Then we also analyzed the contents of a privacy notice vis-a-vis what is typically expected in a notice. We found that 77% of the apps are silent on what happens to the data after the app is deleted, a concern which is repeatedly voiced by people. We came up with what is known as a comprehensiveness index, and we found that the average score was 57%. And again, we specifically looked at what are high concern areas, banks, fintech, and the stocks, the scores are quite low. Okay. The good news was on the security part, which means most people understand the security aspect of things. So 100% transmission of PI post, no transmission post deletion, 100% PI transmission is encrypted. Little lower, but even storage is encrypted. So this was very encouraging. And this is an overall summary on key points where on an average we are around the 50% mark except for security and safeguards. Okay. So this is a very quick overview. I've just 10 minutes to present this. There's a comprehensive report of our entire study which you can go online and download. You can also download a copy of this presentation, and just to give you an overview, we tested this out of our lab. We do privacy testing based on certain criteria. Thank you very much.
Shivangi, next up we have a plenary session on the future of crime. That is how the world of crime and crime investigation would be shaped in the digital age. Now, on the panel, I would like to call upon Mr. Madan Oberoi, Joint Commissioner Special Cell, Delhi Police, Mr. S. Chandrasekhar, Group Director, Government Affairs, Microsoft India, and Mr. Vinayak Godse, Senior Director, DSCI. All right, my apologies. Mr. Madan Oberoi, he recently got promoted, so now he's the Special Cell Commissioner, Delhi Police. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and this is the last plenary session that we'll be doing on future of crime. And we all know that technology is playing important role either to commit the crime or investigate the crime. So that's why to conduct or to give us that view, we have Chandrasekhar who comes from Microsoft, and we would ask, will probably reveal to us what role the technology players play at this point of probably investigation side, but you also get across to some of the problems that you face in the way the people use technology. And Microsoft has significant investment in terms of solving some of those technology crime issue. To cover the law enforcement perspective, Dr. Mudaran Oravara sir, who we had been associating with him for a long time, so he is a special commissioner, special cell for Delhi Police and technology cell as well, which I came to know of. So he has a responsibility to lay down the technology architecture for Delhi Police, and he would be taking some steps for that. But prior to his work with Delhi Police at this point of time, he was working with Interpol's cyber crime division in Singapore. So he was managing and leading that initiative of Interpol in Singapore. And during that course, I think we got to get a lot of experience and probably learning from him in terms of how the international crime ecosystems work and what it takes basically from the law enforcement side, law enforcement at a local level, at international level to solve these crimes. So we'll cover both of these perspectives. So briefly, both of them would like to talk about briefly the perspective initially about the crime at this point of time that we see and the future of this crime. So we all see that digitization in various spaces has been now significantly been catching up the attention. And this is done for 3-4 things. One is the providing good experience and services to the client, improving the productivity of what you do, and more importantly, improving the cost and efficiency of the operation that we do. And then digitization story is not only, we see it's been only financial sector or e-commerce sector or product economy is going on that direction. We see many conventional industry sector like oil energy sector kind of organization had been also charting out digitization story. So the digital footprint of the companies and individual significantly will be increasing. We used to do one financial transaction probably once in a day, but we are doing now at least multiple transactions in a day, and the number of transactions because of the push of digitization had been significantly rising. So the network itself, the data which is flowing on the network, it was used to be very personal and social kind of thing, but now it will become more financial transaction information flowing on the network. So in this context, what will be our future? And this future is not only determined by the digitization push, but there are many new things which is coming, which we have been discussing as a part of this seminar. So we'll try to explore those kind of areas as a part of this panel. So initial, I would like to hear briefly from both of them. Sir, to start with you, how do you see in current context and the future context? Very briefly, and then we'll have questions leading to that one.
Thank you, Vinayakji. Let me start by putting my problems to you, and then maybe Mr. Chandrasekhan can help us in finding the solutions. Although in law enforcement, many of us believe that the problems come from the technology, so therefore I'm asking him to find solutions as well. The problems which we are facing today are arising out of what is service to others, what is considered as benefits of technology for all the users, but they are at the same time creating problems for law enforcement. And I'll just take a few minutes to explain these, and because that will help us to understand where are we headed to and how there may be some changes which may come. Today, if you talk to anybody about how would you deal with cybersecurity, the standard response would vary from different products, whether it is SOC, CM, IPS, or antivirus, or something related to that. Basically, what everybody is suggesting is building more defenses. But the question which we as policemen ask is building defenses a sufficient solution for ensuring security? If that was the case, higher boundary walls, bigger locks, and maybe more CCTVs would have helped us in securing our cities more safe. But that is not the case. How do we ensure physical security is through successful prosecution of criminals so that deterrence is created? You can't stop everybody. You have to build deterrence so that many potential criminals do not even attempt. This is where we are failing. And this is a situation which is not peculiar to India. This is situation across the globe. The conviction rate in cybercrime is in single digits. In India, based on published statistics, I made an analysis. It was in the range of 1%, and I interpreted that if the prosecution conviction rate is 1%, it actually means 99% confidence level for criminals that they will not be caught. When a criminal works with 99% confidence level, it means zero deterrence. So with that kind of a deterrence, there is no cost on attempt. So he may fail in the first attempt, he may fail in the second attempt, but he will get you in the nth attempt. So that is the situation which needs to change. And why is this happening in cyberspace? It is because of, one, inherent difficulties of attribution in cyberspace. We all are familiar with that. Second, additional issues caused by multi-jurisdictional nature of cybercrime, whereby evidence and clues are spread across different jurisdictions, and the current legal regimes do not allow smooth flow of information and smooth flow of intelligence to combat this kind of situation. So these are the problems which we are facing with regard to cybercrime. Now, how things would come out in future, the broad trends which we are seeing is more data being available, a situation of a data tsunami happening, more flow of information happening between different jurisdictions, more convergence happening, more digitization happening. So more surfaces for attack would be available. More data would be there to be captured. More multi-jurisdictional investigations would be there. But if these are not combined with adequate countermeasures, we will be in for problem. And one other important thing, which is a very hotly debated topic these days, is encryption. Should we view encryption only through single-dimensional way of looking at from the prism of privacy only? Or does national security have, is a relevant factor in that regime also? So these are different issues which have to be answered before we can look forward to tackling crime in future.
Yeah, thanks, sir, for putting these points together, which provides context to discussion. So based on this point, plus experience of Microsoft, so Chandrasekhar, you can comment. And
so Microsoft handles more than 95% of the PCs, and it's largest cloud provider in the world, more than 22 large-scale data centers going around. So we are, as a company, the second most attacked institution other than the US government. So we experience firsthand the diverse range of hacking and a diverse range of cyber crimes which happen. And for us, it is a 24/7 operation with a $1 billion investment into cybersecurity to keep our software and our systems safe. And what we are seeing is that looking into the future, it's very risky to predict or foretell the future. But looking at the future, some few trends come out. First is that by and by, as the cyber criminals are getting better, so are the cybersecurity and the normal software products. So these days, two-factor authentication is almost the norm. Biometrics is coming into all applications. So in my view, the era of script kiddies is over. I mean, 10 years back, you used to see script kiddies trying to hack into emails and then getting. So the era of script kiddies seems to be over. The second thing what we are noticing is highly sophisticated kind of phishing attacks. So it is, I won't call it spear phishing, I will call it sniper phishing. So something as accurate as a sniper hitting you from 2 kilometers away. They do a very extended study of the intended target, map all the list of the person's friends, likes, dislikes, jokes, everything, and then they go for the attack. The third trend which we are seeing is that cybercrime is getting industrialized. So, for example, now a normal enterprise doesn't have to bother too much about its cybersecurity if they are outsourcing to a cloud player. But what we are seeing is attempts at breaking into the cloud players and stealing their credentials. So to give you an example, we had given a few hundred free cloud accounts to a university in China. And we started noticing after some time that those credentials had been hacked from that university and they were being sold in the open market. Various ingenious ways of committing crime are now coming up. We have come across 2 or 3 call centers in India where they ring up vulnerable sections of the population like senior citizens and children, do a little bit of social engineering, get the credentials from them, and then lock their system and then say that you need to pay $50 through credit card and stuff like that, and then open the system. So this is happening on an industrial scale. We have come across call centers employing as many as 400 people, 24/7, doing this crime around the world. The next trend, what we are seeing is the increasing level of sophistication of hacks. So there are a lot of exploits. So as the game is becoming sophisticated, today we have only the big bhais who can operate. So the level of sophistication is ensuring that you have state players, nation states who are investing millions of dollars into developing capability. Some of this leaks out like what has happened in NSA. You have got attacks like Petya and WannaCry, which still, despite all the world getting together, they have not yet been able to attribute it to one person, or they haven't even been able to get proper signatures from the forensic point of view. That is the level of sophistication. So crime will get industrialized. It will become much more sophisticated. The attack surface, as Mr. Oberoi was saying, will extend to the IoT devices. It is quite a frightening situation, but on the positive side, with the level of sophistication coming with all the biometric access and 2-factor or 3-factor authentication, things seem to be improving on that front as well. Remaining comments I'll give as we go by. Thank you.
So thanks, Chandrasekhar, for bringing the perspective of technology provider like Microsoft. So, sir, some of the things that you mentioned, and this is to do with the difficulties in investigation, the crime which has a multi-jurisdictional footprint or aspects. So now if you see the entire and the discussion that we had in last 2 days, there was some discussion on platform security, but the entire society is also becoming more platformized. So increasingly we are probably using very standard global applications. For even fixing our marriage, we go to the marriage website and probably put our profile there to find our partner. So each aspects of the life is getting platformized, and somebody out there in globe would be managing that platform, and he would be doing it in such a way that he was to reach to the global audience and global customers and clients and citizens. So, and then at this point we see the technology evolution in such a way that there is definitely cloud computing and many other international thing which is happening, but going forward there will be too much of the platformization which will happen in various spheres of the life. And some platforms would become important and critical, as we see in case of the Facebook and Google and other parts, but that platform may not be in your geography. So entire life is becoming more platformized, more global in a nature, and more standardized in terms of the globalization. And the crime investigation remains local. So I believe the challenges that we are facing is still early stage of the challenges. But in future, the kind of transaction that we are talking about, digitization we are talking about, a platformization of society we are talking about, probably we'll have a lot of those challenges. And is there any way that people are trying to find? So you had worked with Interpol. So how Interpol had been engaged into these kind of crime investigation, and what learnings that can be taken to this kind of future scenario?
No, I think, Vinayakji, you very rightly put the points. The issues here are, the challenges, you can say they are global challenges. And world over, responses are jurisdictional based. Whether it is a jurisdiction of a thana or a subdivision or a district or a state or a country. And the challenge is coming from criminals who are coordinating across the globe. So a global challenge is being answered through jurisdictional response, and it is bound to fail. But the good thing is that there's a growing realization of this problem, that we are coming out with jurisdictional-based responses for a global challenge. The policymakers across the world are now realizing that this is not going to succeed. But what is preventing from coming to a global response? That is slightly tricky because that involves issues of sovereignty, issues of data ownership, issues of cyber diplomacy. So many issues get combined there. As law enforcement agencies, we have to work around these issues and still try to find a solution. So at Interpol, what we decided was to find a way to get around this, and which is also being done at Europol also. And the way is that, one, we need information, collaboration for information for 3 stages. One is for getting actionable intelligence. So for actionable intelligence, Interpol as a global platform established what they call as Cyber Fusion Center, where different jurisdictional actors from different countries, 190 countries were represented, bringing their pieces of puzzle. Different stakeholders like cybersecurity companies, Interpol had strategic partnership with Trend Micro, Kaspersky and others. They were represented there. Different stakeholders in terms of user organizations like Barclays Bank, JP Morgan, they were represented there. So academia was represented there. All of them coming together, bringing their pieces of information to produce actionable intelligence, which was then shared. Similarly for operations, second stage is for joining hands for operation. So what was more successfully has been attempted in Europol is the JCAT model, whereby they identify a problem based on the intelligence, they identify which countries are impacted by that. And then each of those countries sends a liaison officer and they jointly work on that problem and identify a solution, and then operational action is taken across these countries.
And then, but Gambit is like what Chandrasekhar tells us, that somebody making call to some citizen in US and trying to fraud him by making call, by providing some tech support service or many other things that they try to do. So this is one leg of the problem. Other leg of the problem is something which Bangladesh Central Bank had. So in that gambit, how exactly the international responses from law enforcement?
I think you chose a very good example, Bangladesh Bank East. So if you look at how it was handled, there was a team from Interpol, there was a team from Europol, Bangladesh CID was there, Trend Micro was there, Japanese company called Cyber Defense Institute was there, then FireEye was there, Symantec was there, Philippines National Police was there, FBI was there. All of them worked jointly to identify how it happened. And then tracing the travel of money proceed in Philippines was also captured, and some of it has been recovered. So that is probably a way forward. But the problem in this model is, in how many cases can it be replicated?
Yeah.
It can happen for
can
Bangladesh.
It be scalable to the challenges that we will be looking at?
It can happen for one big case like Bangladesh Bank East, but if I am robbed of 10,000 rupees, will all these agencies come together? No.
Yeah.
So that is the problem which we are facing.
Yeah. So Chandrasekhar, as a a technology provider, solving the criminal issues, and you would be getting up those many requests from all geographies that you are operating in. How do technology providers like Microsoft deals with all the law enforcement requirement coming from various different geographies?
Yeah, interesting question. So we have entire division which is dealing with law enforcement requests, whether it is Hotmail, Live.com, or Skype, or our cloud services. So, and we have very standardized procedures. When we get a request, we need to find out whether the request is genuine, whether the request is legal, and whether the request is within the bounds of law. Because while India is a democracy and India is very transparent, there are several countries in the world where the government may want the details of the emails just in order to fix their political opponent or to fix personal enmity of the senior leadership and stuff like that. So we need to do a check and then we respond. So typically the metadata we are able to give it in 4 working days. And if it is the content of the email, then we request the country to go through the MLAT process. If it's a terrorism related case and if it is a case where instant response is required, within hours we are able to provide it.
And day by day, year by year, this is improving. The time period that is...
Yes, the time period is improving because what happens is that part of the delay is also because we have not been able to communicate to the law enforcement agencies what is the right process. So sometimes it takes them back and forth to give the request in the correct format and to quote the relevant provisions of the Indian Penal Code or the IT Act. So that is a failing from our side, where we are working with the government to improve the response time.
So, sir, you also raised an important point of encryption. We had today morning very ferocious discussion about each and every session that is being initiated should be encrypted. So somebody was preaching that idea that there should be 100% encryption. And I was part of some of the Europol discussion where we are talking about internet going dark. And because internet going dark because of the encryption, the ability of law enforcement to get the information for the investigation purpose is significantly limited, and it will be limited in the future as well. So that's the future that LEAs all across globals are struggling, and there are ways to, there are various cases like Apple device case which had seen in the US, had talked about and has given us a testimony of that one. So while this is a very important rational argument which comes against the idea of making everything encrypted for security or for purpose of privacy, but then there is another argument that people are making that the data is immensely available. So all of us are generating data. So we are creating our own data, going to all of those platforms I talked about, or data is in respective of us is getting even created. For example, I am being here is recorded digitally. Or for example, now Face ID of Google, Apple will record my face and my emotions as well. So and then there are so much of the data is available to you for the investigation. So on the one hand, there is a definitely very clear requirement, but on the other hand, you have so much of the enrichment of data for investigation purpose. So do you see the concern with respect to availability of data is getting balanced with the availability of data that you have?
I would say at this point of time, let me first put a rider. These are my personal
views.
And
that is well known, yeah.
At this point of time, in such heated discussions, I don't see that there's a balance there because both points of views are valid. But what we have to understand is that from law enforcement side, there's a need to understand that privacy of the personal data is also very important and nothing should be done to compromise that. But at the same time, if there's a national security issue which is involved and there's an issue of my photographs being looked at, balance would have to be drawn there. So how do we do that? And we can look at other modes. For example, when I'm making telephonic calls, my calls with my wife are my private calls and nobody should hear them. But government, by an act of parliament, has allowed interception of these calls with a procedure, with the oversight body, with subject to the legal review, etc. So maybe with encryption also, these things need to be provided with riders, so that maybe if this can be, decryption can be done with a court order, or maybe it can be done with a judicial oversight. Some kind of ways have to be found. It cannot be extreme form of privacy with zero for national security, or all heavily loaded towards national security without concern for privacy of personal data. So a balance needs to be found.
So from the technology provider side, so privacy is an important part for you to protect, and,
yes,
and at
so,
the same time,
correct. So we are caught in a bind because privacy and security of data is one of the things which we sell. But at the same time, we are also cognizant of the fact that without physical and national security, none of this will exist. We need a safe and secure environment for business and for citizens to thrive. So our focus is mainly on enterprises. More than 90% of our customers are enterprise customers. And our enterprises, they operate within the legal confines. They are registered entity in a particular country. So law enforcement has access to the data which is being created in the enterprises. The problem comes with the consumer services like Hotmail, etc., etc. There again, we do not believe that there should be no access, there should be nothing. We do not believe that law enforcement should be blind to it. We believe that law enforcement should have access, nations should be safe, our families should be safe. We only try to strike a balance so that our point of view is valid for all countries around the world. And so few countries might find our response slow, few countries might find our response a little fast, but we need to keep that balance because we have to survive as a commercial entity. Thank you.
So I think in terms of discussion, probably we put some points here, but we would also like to take any questions or comment from the users. Yeah, can somebody give the mic there?
Hello, sir. My name is Samved and I'm from NCR Corporation. I have two things to discuss, and if you can shed some more light on that. Like we have seen Apple is being adamant in not sharing the data. So I have read an article, it was in United States, where the government wants Apple to decrypt the device so that they can retrieve some information related to the criminal. And they were quite adamant that they are not going to do that, and they did not done that. So do we have some kind of regulation in India as well that will help, or that will, give edge to our government official on that? One. Second thing is that, what do you think, like WhatsApp has been encrypting everything while your message is been going on the air, that is encrypted, and voice call. So that is good on the security point of view, but don't you think that will give an edge to the criminal as well?
Yeah.
Let me answer the first part first. Coming to the Apple, this thing, the issue there was, what was the specific question? Could you just repeat that?
Definitely.
So is there a legal empowerment for such kind of thing in India where you can go with legal order to investigation?
Yeah. You see, the legal requirement, if you look at in terms of providing document or information, is there. For example, if I know you have a document under section 91 CRPC, I can ask you to give that document to me. But when you say that you do not have that information, you cited the example of WhatsApp, you don't, where they will claim that they do not have that information, then as per law, there is no legal procedure available to force them to give that information.
Okay, but in case of Apple, they can decrypt that, right? Or they can unlock the device.
No,
so
see, means I think you can cover that.
That was what you are saying is it was a different. Apple was not for decryption. It was going around the restriction of number of attempts. And they worked, FBI worked with another company and found a way of vulnerability to go around that.
So there are players, so that didn't go to the player, that got gone to the device of the user, and they work with their own way. So they had gone to endpoint for that case. But the discussion is primarily how the technology providers would be able to give that information, and encryption is definitely creating all that problem. I hope we answer both of those questions. Any other question or comment? So if there are not any comments, I think one or two things basically, sir, you can comment, and you can comment as to just conclude this discussion. One is on, many of the systems which is being developed, and now we talk about digitization and big data, analytics, and so many new things which will be coming in. So how these new technologies which are coming would be impacting the investigation side, and are this technology, so till now the technology were in such a way that there could be some investigation can be possible, but would there be difficulties in investigating some of the new technologies coming in? So from both of you, I like to, from the investigation side and from your side as well.
Let me make the request first.
Yeah.
So we have been saying at Interpol, we were requesting all the companies for two things: security by design and forensics by design.
Yeah, investigative requirement embedded into design itself.
When a new product is being built, security has to be kept in hand. It should not be an afterthought. And a very interesting concept was developed by a professor from South Australia University, Professor Raymond Chu, who said that forensics by design should be there, whereby a kind of a black box can be embedded in a device which captures forensic data, and it can be unlocked only by a court order, so which will take care of.
I believe all the law enforcement agencies, for example, privacy by design was some Canada privacy commissioner started, and she created global momentum of that one. All law enforcement agencies should be doing this forensic by design kind of campaign, and that should be creating some requirement for technology companies. Sir, your comment last.
Yeah. So my comment is that these days the entire security debate has gone out of the hands of the major players. So we are talking about two things: safeguarding ourselves and the attackers. So as far as safeguards are concerned, it is the big platform players and the big companies who are trying to build in more and more safeguards. But there is a big bad world out there. They say that the dark web and the deep web is more than 1000x the size of the normal World Wide Web. So technology is a challenge even for us. We are also getting attacked. And while there is the idea of forensics by design is very good, but we also have to plan for the big bad world out there where there is no design.
Yeah. So I think this concludes this discussion. I hope this was useful to understand the contemporary challenges and some of the future challenges that investigation side will be faced. And that is how the future of criminal ecosystem will be evolved. And the challenges which both has to solve, primarily somebody who is developing technology and providing those abilities to investigate the technical as well as non-technical crime based on that. And the law enforcement agencies, basically, one is the capability side, but more importantly, how they are empowered to do those kind of investigation. So I think these are the key challenges. I believe a lot of deliberation discussions happening all across platform, at Interpol, at Europol, at various different platform. And hope discussion will continue on, but at least I had seen the kind of responses that Interpol could generate for the Bangladesh bank. That was really heartening and pleasing to see that the big fraud was averted there, and it was supposed to be going to very big fraud, and then the kind of response the technology providers are giving and the efficiency they are bringing to the responses is also a kind of heartening sign. So with this note, please join me. Yeah,
Just to add a clarification, Interpol did not prevent the
no, but at least
that
investigation side, yeah,
that was spelling switch.
Yeah. Investigation side definitely contributed a lot. So with this note, please join me to give a big hand to both of my panelists.
Thank you, Vinayak.
Thank you, sir, and thanks for participating here.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oberoi, Mr. Chandrasekhar, and Vinayak for the insightful session. With this, we end the last plenary of AISS 2017. So, over these last 3 days of our conference, we have spoken a lot about the malwares and the ransomware and other complicated aspects of cybersecurity on this planet Earth. So, in the last session of AISS 2017, we would like to take you over the moon. So, are you excited? Yeah? Okay. So now, as your personal tour guide, I would like to invite Mr. Dhananjay Sharma to enlighten us about the fascinating work that is being done by Team Indus.
$30 million money to reinvent how we get to space, how we get to the moon. These people are trying to demystify this entire concept of a lunar exploration. I think this is exceptional. I don't care who you are, what you've done before. The first person to make that happen wins. We're from the aerospace division. Which one is going to land on the moon? I think we ran out of doing crazy stuff on planet Earth, so that's the next place to go.
Everyone here realizes that we're moving this thing, and I think that's what drives me the most.
Right money on offer is far less than what it is going to cost anything to do this, and that's the challenge. We have the talent, we have the caliber, we have the initiative, and we have the motivation. Let's compete at the world and see if we can win. And I think when they win, India wins.
Hi. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just waiting for my yeah, great. So presentation's online. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dhananjay Sharma, and you've seen a short video about Team Indus and what we do. Before I'd like to start my presentation, just a show of hands. How many of you have heard of Team Indus before this? Wow, 4 people. That's great. We usually get 1, 2 hands. 4 is kind of doubling that participation. That's good to see. So the PR department back in office will be very happy. Great. So like the slide says, we're Team Indus, and our attempt is to architect a new India through what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is not only figuratively a moonshot, but it's also literally a moonshot, because we're trying to put India on the moon. So we started our journey back in 2009 when we discovered a competition called the Google Lunar X Prize. The competition itself had started off in 2007. We discovered it 2 years later and took part in it a year later, because just like every one of us here today, we truly believed that this was a great competition, this was a great opportunity, and somebody else should do it. The traffic out there is bad, somebody should fix it. There's a garbage problem in the city, there's a pollution problem in the city, somebody should fix it. And that's what the problem is, right? We always keep waiting for somebody to fix it, and we will stand up after somebody starts and support them. That's exactly how we started as well, till literally the last day of the competition, where we kept asking the organizers, the X Prize Foundation, that, hey, is there an Indian team? If there is, we'd like to support them. Finally, I think the organizers got fed up and said, why don't you do it? And that's when it kind of hit us, you know. If we actually wanted to see some sort of change in the country, if we wanted to see some change in the ecosystem of our country, we needed to be that change. So we immediately said yes and registered for the competition. We started off with just 4 people with absolutely no background in aerospace. And today we've grown into an organization of 120 people. This is us, simply to put it in 2 lines. Team Indus is building a privately funded spacecraft to land on the moon by 2018. Because there's such few of you here, I'd like to keep this as interactive as possible. Again, just raise your hand. How many countries do you think have made it to the moon till date? 1. Okay, any more than 1? 5, okay, I heard somebody say 5. 3, okay. Wait, the person who said 5, where are you? There? Can you name the countries, please? Okay, so the person who said 3, and I saw a lot of people laughing in the audience as well, because it's kind of on the slide. Only 3 countries have managed to make it to the moon till date. And it's the 3 countries, you guessed, that's right. It's the Americans and the Russians who did it back in the 1960s and 70s. Before this competition started in 2007, only 2 countries had done it. In 2013, China went there. And we're trying to make India the 4th nation to be able to do so. We started off our journey on this mission with just that thought. You know, to try and put India on the moon, make India the 4th nation there, try and achieve something which is thought impossible by private enterprise. One of the rules of the competition was that you had to be 90% privately funded or you couldn't be part of this. All of these countries that have managed to land on the moon have done it through their own space agencies with next to infinite resources and time. The competition started off with 30 teams. We were the 30th team to register. Today, there are just 5 teams left in this competition. There are 2 American teams. There's a team from Japan. There's a team from Israel. And there's us, the only Indian team that's been in this competition for the last 7 years. The 2 American teams have next to no chance. We're fairly confident of that. The Japanese team is flying with us. And so it's just a 2-horse race. So it's not that we're part of a top 5, we're actually part of a top 2. So this is the technology that goes behind our mission. To everyone's far right is the PSLV XL. That's the one thing that we're not building. We're purchasing that from ISRO. Any idea where you might have heard of the PSLV in the last 6 months? The PSLV XL, it broke a world record. Correct, that's right. So this is the same rocket that launched 104 satellites. We are purchasing a dedicated launch vehicle for us. Has a capacity of 1.4 tons. We're going to be using only 600 kilograms of that because that's our mission design. And that's where we come in, at the payload of that 600 kilograms. We're building the spacecraft, the heavy lifting in terms of engineering that's going to take us from the Earth to the moon. It's at 600 kilograms at liftoff. 400 kilograms of this is just fuel. This is what's going to help us get from the Earth to the moon. And it has a capacity to carry 20 kilograms of payload. It's called the HHK, stands for Hum Honge Kamyab. And its primary payload is called ECA, Ek Choti Si Asha, and that's our rover. She's the first of her kind, an under 7.5 kilogram microclass rover. In comparison, the lightest rover on the moon today is 130 kilograms. And that was taken by the Chinese mission back in 2013. The other payloads that we are carrying is truly a global mix. We're also carrying the Japanese rover with us. So the Japanese team that's part of this competition did not build a spacecraft of its own, hence couldn't get from the Earth to the moon. We've built that technology and they're going to be depending on us to be able to give them that ride. Other payloads globally, we have a student experiment from Peru. We have a student experiment from the United Kingdom. We have a student experiment from Italy. And 3 other student experiments that we're carrying from India. This is our space map, basically. The PSLV, like I said, is a 1.4-ton capacity rocket. Because it's carrying only a 600 kilogram payload of ours, it's going to drop us off at 800 kilometers above the Earth's surface, which is double what it would usually do. Once we get dropped off by the PSLV, we do a couple of orbits around the Earth, basically turning on all of our sensors, our rocket engines, and also gaining enough momentum to be able to slingshot around the Earth and head to the moon. Once we're close enough to the moon, we slow down and get caught by the moon's gravity. Once we get caught by the moon's gravity, we keep reducing our orbits till we reach S3, which is our third selenocentric orbit and our parking orbit. This is how far Chandrayaan-1 got. That was India's first ever mission to the moon. And we're 99.99% confident that we're also going to get here. Because the mission director of Chandrayaan-1, Mr. Srinivas Hegde, is the mission director of Team Indus as well. So that's the kind of experience that we have working with us today to be able to build India's and the world's first ever private mission to the moon. Once we're in that parking orbit, we wait for lunar dawn to occur on the surface. Any guesses as to why we need it to be lunar day to land? So I heard energy and from one side and solar from the other. So I'm just going to combine that and say, yes, that's right. We're completely solar powered. All of our electronics run on solar energy, hence we need the sunlight there. Any other reason? No guesses? Sorry? No, I mean, sunlight does not affect gravitational pull at all, sorry.
I'm talking about the lunar...
sorry?
Not the charging, but the lunar, the gravitational pull you require to, for the moon, or to land on the moon.
No, I mean, like I said, sunlight really does not affect the gravitational pull at all.
Might be the like density pressure whenever you're downing, you are coming landing to the moon, it will take less time during the lunar timing.
No, so it again has nothing to do with time. So the second reason is why actually a lot of us also need the sun right now in the Delhi winter, temperature. It's really cold on the moon at night, so it's about minus 200 degrees Celsius, so none of our electronics work at that temperature. In the morning, it's about 180 degrees Celsius, which is good enough for our electronics to work. So we need not only the solar power that the solar energy gives us, but also the temperature that is required to function the electronics. So once lunar dawn occurs, we initiate descent. It's a distance of 12.6 kilometers, and it's completely autonomous. We have no control over the spacecraft. The spacecraft is on its own, real-time, deciding how, where, and at what speed it needs to land on the moon. This is the most crucial part of the entire mission. This is why only 3 countries have managed to make it to the moon, because this is not a simple task. There's no heritage data available for people to go through and try and figure it out through Google searches. So once we do land on the moon, we have 14 days of surface operations, because one lunar day is 14 Earth days. So these are some of the tests that we've done along the way in the 7-year journey till date. On my right is basically us testing that landing algorithm. We build statistical models of the lunar surface and basically keep iterating on this algorithm and the code that we write for this. Before we do launch, we do anything between 2.5 to 3 million such simulations of just that 15-minute algorithm. Right next to that is us testing the hardware. We did this drop test back in 2014 for an independent panel of judges that the Google Lunar X Prize had appointed. They basically looked at these tests and said that we were capable of not only launching but also landing on the moon. For that, they awarded us $1 million. Till date, our only revenue. So this is how we communicate with the spacecraft. Bailalu, which is right outside Bangalore, was built during Chandrayaan-1. It's part of what's called the Deep Space Network. And we plug into this, and Bailalu is our primary ground station. Diametrically opposite to that is Goldstone in California. And because the Earth's rotating and the Moon's rotating, and so is the spacecraft, we need direct line of sight to be able to communicate with the spacecraft. Hence, when the Earth rotates, once Bailalu loses direct line of sight, Goldstone takes over. Madrid and Canberra are placed in between these 2 ground stations as our backup, and same logic, they're 180 degrees apart. Biak is another ISRO-owned ground station which basically monitors the launch. So this is the team. We started off with just 4 people. All of them were engineers from the IT sector. None of them had a background in aerospace. And literally the first thing that we did as a company was Google search how to build a spacecraft, because we had absolutely no idea. From that, we've grown into an organization of 120 engineers today, 12 of whom are retired ISRO scientists. And just amongst them, we have about 400 years worth of space science experience that goes to work for us every day. That's also kind of our secret. We've got the experience of about 400 years guiding young and hungry engineers, anything between the age of 24 to 26, working under that guidance and trying to do new things. Along the way, we've gotten a lot of credibility. Our biggest piece of credibility obviously came with the fact that ISRO decided to give us a dedicated launch vehicle. Till they gave us a launch vehicle, they had never ever given out a dedicated launch vehicle to a private enterprise in India. They had never given a private enterprise in the world an assigned launch vehicle either. We're planning to launch in 6 months, and as of me giving this talk to you, in Sriharikota, they're manufacturing the PSLV that's going to carry us to the lower Earth orbit. Another space agency that we have tied up with is the French Space Agency. So the French are not going to the moon anytime before 2020, 2021. Hence, they decided that the best bet for them to be able to test out some hardware on the surface of the moon was a team that's actually going there. Hence, they decided to fly their cameras with us. So the eyes of our rover ECA are going to be French cameras, and all of the cameras on the spacecraft as well are going to be the cameras by the French agency. And like I said, the Japanese team are flying their rover with us. This is basically a beta flight for us. This is the beta test. This is the first time we're going to be able to prove our technology in terms of what we've built, and we already have a paying customer. So this is our timeline. 2011 is not really featured on that because all we could write under that was Google searches. 2012 is when we basically came up with the entire mission plan, the roadmap, and the design for it. 2013, 14, and 15 went into a lot of prototyping. Some of the prototyping yielded a lot of incentive for us by getting the $1 million. 2016 was a landmark year for us when we got the launch contract. 2017, the same set of judges that came and reviewed us the first time in 2015 came down, did a more in-depth review of the entire mission, the plan, and basically said that, we're good to go. We could launch in the next 6 months, and we'd be able to execute this mission. 2018, 6 months from now, is when we plan to launch. So Pranoya is one of the ideals and feelings around which we've built this entire company. Everyone that works for Team Indus truly believes that if we work on this hard enough, believe in this hard enough, somehow the universe and people around us will conspire to get this done. These are some of our conspirators. I don't have to name any of them, but there's something that really ties all of them together. The one common thing that ties all of them together is best articulated by Mr. Nandan when he was recently asked as to why is he supporting this mission, why is he pumping his personal money into keeping something like this afloat. He said that he doesn't know what the kind of impact in terms of technology this mission would have, but if we manage to launch from Sriharikota, if we manage to make it till the orbit of the moon, the kind of impact it will have on the generations of Indians to come would be immeasurable. This would have the same effect it had in 1969 on Americans when Neil Armstrong set his foot on the moon. Every American on Earth truly believed that if they could dream it, they could achieve it. And that's what he thinks would happen for India as well. Also, this common feeling of the kind of impact we would have on the generations to come made us realize quite early in our mission that this was something that's not just restricted to the 120, 130 people working on this. This is something that needs to be taken out to as many Indians as possible. Because at the end of the day, when we do land on the moon, we will make India the 4th nation on it. This was not just our moonshot. This was her Indian ka moonshot. And in this endeavor of us trying to take this mission to as many people as possible, we've had a bunch of activities that we've done. The first thing was a global challenge for anybody below the age of 25 to imagine, design, and build an experiment that could help sustain human life in space. We had 3,000 entries for this in June of 2016 from 15 different countries. We had to shut down registrations after that. Out of these 3,000 entries, we shortlisted it down to 25. which were asked to build a prototype. These prototypes were then reviewed by the experts at Team Indus and the engineers as well. We shortlisted this down to 15, flew these 15 teams down to India, and basically asked them to present their ideas in front of a 3-person jury. The jury consisted of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who is the former chairman of ISRO, Dr. Alain Bensoussan, who is the former chairman and president of the European Space Agency and the French Space Agency, and Dr. Priyamvada Natarajan, who is an astrophysicist and teaches astrophysics at the University of Yale. These judges finally decided to shortlist not just one winner, but 8 experiments that they wanted us to find a way to fly. Our second endeavor was to try and take this mission to people who traditionally would not have access to it. We built the Moonshot Wheels bus to travel 12,500 kilometers across India with an aim of impacting and taking this message to 36,000 government school kids. Today, it's about 11 months into its journey and has already crossed 40,000 government school kids. It sets up a 5-day fair in every city it goes to, and in each 5-day fair impacts about 500 to 600 government school kids. So, anybody in the audience below the age of 25? Nobody below the age of 25? One person. Okay, you missed out on Lab to Moon, I'm sorry. Anybody who studies in a government school right now? No? Okay. So the last question is, would you guys want to be a part of this mission as well? What, just 3 people? So, can again, just because I'm slightly hard of hearing, can I see a show of hands of how many people want to be a part of this mission? Okay, that's very heartwarming. A lot of people did raise your hands. So this is an opportunity for you to do that. We're launching a program very soon that's called the Moonshot Crew. It's basically an invitation to every Indian to come forward and actually make this mission happen. Become an actual stakeholder in this mission and come be that 12th man for our team. You know, when a team's playing in a stadium, the 12th man is the crowd that's watching them, cheering them, and pushing them across the finishing line. That's what we need the people of India to do. Basically, our idea is to invite, from a country of 1.3 billion, 10 lakh Indians to come forward and support this mission by paying a token amount of INR 500. And in return, what we'll do is inscribe your name on a metallic cube, put it on our spacecraft, and send it to the moon, forever immortalizing your names in history as being a group of people who catalyzed and made possible private enterprise and private space enterprise out of this country. Out of these 10 lakh people, some of them will get to witness this mission firsthand. Some of them will get to witness this mission firsthand, and a bunch of you will be invited to our facility to be able to view the building of this mission, the building of the spacecraft, the rover. You get to see the dynamic of young engineers working with experts. And some of you will also get to be able to assemble a space-grade rover and learn what is the science and technology that goes behind us building a rover, the first of a kind, to be able to land on the moon. Some of you will also get to spend anything between a week to 3 weeks with us, embed yourself in a team that's actually working on the moon mission, and maybe, if you're good enough, contribute in a small way to the building of India's first ever private mission to the moon. And finally, 50 people from that 10 lakh will get to sit in our command center and witness the launch of the PSLV rocket live. As we're watching it live, you get to witness and experience this space mission live when it happens. Today, only 3 kinds of people in India can view a PSLV launch from a mission command center. 1 are the people that work at ISRO. 2 is the Prime Minister of this country. 3 is a person who can buy the entire rocket for themselves. So we've done the 3rd thing, and we want to be able to share this kind of experience with you and give you behind-the-scenes views of things that you'd never usually get to. An assumption is that a rocket launch is about 10 seconds of countdown. It's actually a day and a half. And our idea is to be able to share that day and a half with you. And once this mission goes live, we'll be able to share all of the data that's coming in live through our command center. But at the end of the day, it's being in that command center, being part of a mission that you made happen, and celebrating with the team when they celebrate, because you're part of that team. This is also something really cool. We don't commit to this when we start, but every one of those 50 people who's part of those command centers, once we land and complete our 500 meters, will be able to drive the rover on the moon through their mobile phones. We're building the infrastructure and the software where through your mobile phone and an app, you can connect with our command centers, and through the deep space network send signals to be able to control the rover on the moon. This is about witnessing history in the making and being part of it as well. This is the first time ever our country is going to attempt a landing mission on a celestial body. This is the first time ever globally that private enterprise is going to embark on a space exploration mission. Today, the leaders and pioneers of private space enterprise like SpaceX and Blue Origin have only managed to make it till Earth's orbit. We're going to be a small team that's been working on this problem statement for 7 years who are going to break away from that and create history. So this is us. We're Team Indus. We're India's Apollo moment. Do follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and yeah, that's it. Any questions? So yeah, any questions that anybody has, I'm happy to answer.
So this is a really great presentation and a great thing to see and witness basically in terms of presentation. If you see the history, there are some basic key things which had happened in history. Some basic skill and capabilities are very important for the nations to have. For example, cartography is a skill, which is a map-making skill. And only those two countries had those skills, France and England. That's why they could rule the world at that point in time. So probably we talk about in cybersecurity space, we talk about the continuity. And I heard that the continuity concept can go to the level of planetary mobility of the humanity as well. And when we are going to that dream and that regime basically, this capability in the country is very important critical capability. And really kudos to you to saw that dream and probably brought to the realism of that dream. So this is just comment from my side and very important thing that you have been doing. But just to contextualize to the discussion here that we have been doing, so the test that you talked about is primarily the different tests you have been doing. Have you also done cybersecurity test on this one?
Honestly, I actually do not have an answer for that. But I will actually go back to office and check with the software team if we've done those tests as well. I honestly don't have an answer for that. Any other questions? Okay.
Also in your checklist, I think quantum cryptography will help you. Quantum cryptography.
Sorry?
Quantum cryptography is the latest trend for cryptography.
Yeah.
And for communications, now China is also started. I recommend to use that quantum cryptography from deep space.
I'll let the software team know on that. Great. So before I leave, I'd like to leave you with a few glimpses of our team and facility.
Whoa.
great presentation. Thank you so much, Dhananjay, and hope to see you on the moon next year. So, and I'm sure hum zarur kamyab honge. So now for the closing session, I would like to call upon our CEO, Ms. Rama Vedashri, to officially close the AISS 2017. And just a small piece of information, somebody left his or her phone on the registration desk. So please contact the DSCI team in case it's yours. It's some OnePlus model.
It's such an inspiring session, right? And particularly as an Indian, it really tugs your heart to see something like this, that there's a team out there in India dreaming this big and really making it happen. And sometimes many of us really don't dream big or don't make the effort to make even some of our small dreams happen. Go for it, guys. Okay? So it's almost 3 days of a very hectic, engaging, hopefully intellectually stimulating, networking, meeting old friends, old peers, old maybe competitors for some of you all. There's a whole bunch of people that you meet, meeting a whole lot of customers, potential, current, maybe old customers whom you have to win back. So there's a whole lot of people that each one of us get to meet. Of course, we at DSCI, the entire team at DSCI, I mean, it's an extremely satisfying moment for us to be able to host this and set a new benchmark every year, and most importantly, create an enriching and satisfying experience. And to be able to build something like this, for a lot of people who come to AIS's first time, they must be thinking that DSCI has an army of resources, researchers, event management, marketing teams. You'll be surprised that we are less than 20 people at DSCI who puts this together. And when we put this AIS's conference together, it's not that the entire team is only working on this. We are doing all our regular activities, our charter, our committee meetings, our technology sessions, member meetings, doing all our updates on technology teams or whatever we do. And in addition to that, the entire team multiplexes. So first, before I get into some of the highlights of the conference, I wanted each one of us to say a huge thank you to the team DSCI and give them a round of applause. For the entire agenda and theme, there's one of my colleagues whom all of you know, Vinayak Godse, and there's a small core technical team. This year, I think Vinayak and Aditya and Mayank worked on the core team of the agenda, the speakers, the sessions, and the flow. And an experience like this over the 3 days, whether it's the gala dinner, the entire experience of registration and getting connected with your peers. There's a technology team that works on it, and there is a creative team that works on it, which is essentially Satyapal and Amit Ghosh. So the creative and the technology team create that online experience for you. And of course, an event team, we have a very core team, which is Vani and Shailendra, who helps us with the entire exercise. And a backbone of the entire communication and the engagement with the delegates and the speakers, the PR exercise of it. In addition to that, she's done a lot of other things. There's a colleague of mine called Preeti who's working on that. Most of you all know, but I just wanted to talk about the team which puts together. And this year there are one extremely satisfying thing for me, particularly as their team lead, is that the very young colleagues of us who have stepped up onto the plate and conducted a whole lot of workshops, which I think some of you all have attended. I want to specifically call out their names. Apart from contributing to the whole of AISS, I've had some very young colleagues do a whole lot of workshops. Vinayak is somebody whom you all have always engaged in stimulating workshops. After working for, I think, 2-3 months, maybe, may not be 24/7 because I'm sure he sleeps, maybe 18/7 or 20/7, you see the energy he has even in a last session before the moonshot session. So apart from Vinayak, this year we particularly had some engaging workshops, which one of my very young colleagues, Madhvi, who did a cryptology workshop, she's put in a lot of effort on that. We've had Astha support Vinayak in two very innovative breakfast sessions which a few of us attended. Even I had a chance to attend a workshop today on design thinking and its applications for security. And there was another one on, what was that, I forgot. There was one on project immortality there and the ethics of this thing, which I think was the workshop yesterday. There were two one tech team member, Mayank, apart from putting the agenda together, he's driven a whole lot of sessions. One of my colleagues, Anand, was deeply engaged on the privacy and data protection things. So he was doing a lot of background work on talking to all of your experts, because yesterday in my workshop, in my inaugural session, we talked about having to put a very strong response and a very deep and in-depth response to the data protection draft, because that's going to shape the data protection legislation and regime in the country. So one of my colleagues, Anand, has been working with a lot of you to gather inputs, and hopefully he will further continue the discussion so that by the month end, by December 31st or whatever is the deadline that Ministry of IT gives us, he puts together. And then there's this entire engagement with startups and products. You've noticed that this year, while we have had a lot of global majors and the entire user organizations come to the summit, I'm sure you have seen a new energy and a spring in the step, as they call it, in terms of our young nascent startups and young product companies. They've really changed the game in the last 1.5 years. We've seen a lot of them demonstrate through the technology stalls, present in the innovation box. Many of them, I think, also got to host workshops and do sessions. So there's another young colleague of mine, Atul Gupta, who manages the entire startup and product ecosystem. I want us to, congratulate him for bringing that segment mainstreamed into a large conference like this, because in a large technology conference, it's very easy for the global majors and the large industry players from India to get their attention. But this year, I think we've changed that, where we are able to get, if not equal attention, but very good attention for the young nascent companies who've been able to showcase the technologies. And I've seen a lot of our delegates and speakers and some of the senior officers from government who took a complete stall. They particularly complimented the DSCI team for showcasing some of the young companies, and we at DSCI take a lot of pride in that. Similarly, we have this entire, awards process. The awards process is not easy because we just don't have one bunch of awards and one jury. You must have noticed yesterday in the awards function, we have a corporate segment, we have a law enforcement segment, and we have a product segment. And then to complicate the team's life, we have two more formats called the Segamathon and a Hackathon. So we have different jury members. We've had a law enforcement jury, which had people like Mr. Pratap Reddy, Mr. Bakul Sharma, and the DGP of Kerala Police. Similarly, we had a jury for corporate awards, which had very senior people from the corporate industry, chaired by Pramod Bhasin. Then for Innovation Box, we have a completely different jury, which was here, and some of you all got an opportunity to witness that. And for the product, we again had a different jury chaired by a very senior academician, Dr. Valki. So all of this awards process is not easy. That again is a collective team that puts together. I have a colleague of mine called Sonia, who does a lot of follow-ups with all these nominations. And there's a core team which runs this process. There was a colleague of mine, Shivam. He's recently chosen to move out of DSCI, but I want to acknowledge Shivam, Atul, and Preeti, who drove this entire awards process, because following up with the right constituents, right nominees to follow up with their submissions, and of course, the PwC team, which I acknowledged in the jury awards, they're pretty much an integral part of the DSCI team as far as the awards process. We always work lockstep and barrel in terms of driving nominations and the jury process. And the entire communication on awards, again, my colleague Amit plays a great role in doing this. And of course, the core event team which makes this experience happen is we have a whole team which works on it. Smriti, similarly, I talked about Sonia, and Vani and Shailendra. I mean, everything to do in putting an event of this format, which I think had about, Aditya can correct me, I think we had about 70 sessions. Am I right? 70 sessions, more than 150 speakers, and an audience of 800 plus over the last 2-3 days, and in very different formats. Some of them were in, master class or workshop format. Some of them were keynotes. Some of them were, demo sessions. So it's not very easy to put an infrastructure like this. In terms of the entire law enforcement engagement, some of the sessions like cybercrime, the law enforcement awards, the deep dive sessions on digital forensics. I have another 2 colleagues, Venkatesh and Shashidhar, who have driven that. Many of you all don't get to meet them because they're sitting in Bangalore in the CID office in police. So most often, a lot of them think that they're part of law enforcement. They're not really part of law enforcement. Venkatesh and Shashi are part of our teams. I hope I've not missed out anyone, but the backbone of all of this is, of course, our finance and our HR head, which is Smriti. She puts in a lot of effort. If you see in the awards process, we've had Smriti and Sonia, all of them do the entire thing. It's not easy to get that. I mean, everybody goes off with a wow experience of the awards, but to actually have that flow and the script and get it done, it's not that easy. So I really want to thank the team. The kind of sessions that have been happening, while we are an industry body, we would also like to believe that we like to build that we work with industry members, we work with partners, we work with the CISO community to be able to bring the technology thought leadership to the cybersecurity space. So the kind of sessions that have happened, whether it's deep dive sessions on forensics, malware, that hands-on lab that has happened, to very high-level topics like applying design thinking to security, or very high-level topics of strategy and design thinking. So there were a whole lot of topics, right from micro deep dive topics to strategic thinking in cybersecurity across verticals. And this year for the team DSCI and me personally, and also for Vinayak, we've seen very senior CISO officers committing 3 days of their time at ASS, and that's hugely satisfying for us, because for somebody who's a CISO of a bank or a CISO of a telecom enterprise or even an Indian IT company, it's not easy to get out for 3 days and be at this event. And I think we really value their time, and we value their commitment to DSCI's charter and the community of security professionals. Similarly, I think we've been very lucky to get Mr. Ajay Sani, who is the Secretary IT, and Dr. Gulshan Rai. He rarely comes for award events, but he said, I really want to come and encourage the winners, and he was here yesterday evening. And of course, we had Dr. Sanjay Bail, whom all of us look up to because he runs CERT. So we've had some very senior government officers, including Dr. Madan Oberoi from the Delhi Commissioner, who I think who's really looked up to in terms of the way, the Indian police or law enforcement's understanding of what it takes to address cybercrime because of his role in Interpol. I think we've had a very eclectic mix of speakers, and that we believe, and which is what is very satisfying to DSCI, is that it adds value to our own belief and our confidence in what we are doing, and we hope we'll do better. And both in Raman Roy's talk and we talked about it in the year ahead, we continue to stay focused on this, identifying the new technology imperatives or the new technology drivers that will apply to cybersecurity, the new themes for cybersecurity and data protection and privacy. Similarly, we'll stay focused on, as the data protection regime or the legislation gets, progress happens on that, how do we get the industry ready for the privacy framework and the data protection legislation that comes in India? Because I think we need to be ahead of the curve. We believe user industries and government will probably take longer to adapt, whereas IT industry, because we are already serving global customers, we are getting ready for EU GDPR. I think IT industry and the provider ecosystem can stay ahead of the curve in getting ready for India's proposed data protection legislation. We'll put in a lot of focus on that in terms of engaging with each one of you. And not only cybersecurity industry development, but cybersecurity skills development with another area will be our focus. And the fourth area that we'll continue to stay focused and put in a lot more energy, I think we're not doing enough, we need to do a lot more, is the startups and the product ecosystem development, and how do we make that customer connect happen? How do we take them to global markets? We are actually taking a bunch of startups to a conference in Singapore which is being hosted by Ministry of External Affairs and Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. There was a site conference. I think a bunch of 8 to 10 startups are joining the DSCI team at this. We hope to be able to do more, and we are constrained on our bandwidth, but we'll try and stretch and try and meet various expectations that come from user organizations, government, and our core industry members that we represent. So thank you all, and we hope you've had a great experience. I'm sure in a conference of this, there'll be some small glitches. I hope you will take it in your stride and stay committed to DSCI's platforms, the big events that we do in February. I'm not too sure. Vani and Shailendra can tell me if the dates are finalized. We hope to do a FinSec conclave in Bombay, and of course our best practices meet in June in Bangalore will be the second forum, and there'll be a lot of other roundtables and smaller format workshops that we will continue to host. Thank you so much. A huge round of applause to each one of us, and particularly to the team DSCI. Oh, sorry. I'm extremely sorry because of my extempore thing. I've forgotten to thank a couple of my team members. One is Uday. Uday led many of the sessions, and most importantly, the all-night hackathon. Uday owned it along with Aditya, Shashidhar, and of course Mayank supported that. And there's one colleague in Preeti's team, I'm sorry Vicky, who engages with all our members. If there is one person who's responsible for getting in so many senior CISOs and members from our user organizations, I think that credit goes to Vicky. If you see the mix of IT industry members and CISOs from user organizations, there's been an imbalance in this workshop. We have seen more from the user organizations. Vicky has driven that, and another colleague of mine, Akshay in Smriti's team, who has been able to, put that you must have spotted him in the registration desk and in the speaker room, doing a lot of background work on that. So thank you all, and thanks to Team DSCI, and another round of applause to Vinayak and his team. Thank you. Shailendra, is it over, or you're giving us some tea? Yeah. So let's all have some tea. DSA team, can we have a